Antarctica, a land so vast and unforgiving that it feels almost unreal, as if the planet itself chose to hide this frozen expanse from human eyes. Endless white deserts stretch as far as the eye can see. Jagged ice cliffs rise like ancient fortresses, and storms howl with a ferocity that can snap steel and shatter the human spirit. The sun, when it days to appear, paints the ice in blinding shades of white and blue, reflecting a cold so absolute it seeps into bones, thoughts, and memories. This is a place where life itself seems tentative, fragile, fleeting. Yet beneath the surface of this icy wilderness, whispers of secrets long buried stay. Secrets that, if uncovered, could change the way we see the world forever. For centuries, Antarctica was nothing more than a myth, a distant concept on maps drawn by men who had never dared to cross the ice. Early explorers spoke of a terra incognita, an unknown land at the bottom of the world, full of mystery and danger. Legends told of unreachable mountains, of creatures hidden from human sight, of magnetic anomalies that pulled ships and compasses into chaos. It was a land that invited curiosity, yet punished arrogance. And for most of history, it remained untouched, silent, waiting. The first human footprints here were measured, careful, almost tentative. Explorers battled frostbite, crevasse falls, and storms that could last for weeks without end. Yet, even these brave pioneers reported strange occurrences, inexplicable lights in the sky, structures that appeared to be geometric but clearly not natural, and a sense that they were being watched, even when no one was there. Such observations were often dismissed at the time, attributed to isolation-induced hallucinations or the delirium of extreme cold. But as the years passed, a pattern emerged, one that would not be fully understood for decades. By the mid-20th century, Antarctica was no longer merely a frozen curiosity. It had become a stage, a hidden arena where nations could test themselves in secrecy. And in 1946, following the devastation of World War II, the United States launched an operation so vast, so audacious, that it still echoes through history, but almost no one talks about it. Operation Highjump. On paper, it was a scientific and exploratory mission, a routine exercise in mapping and testing equipment in extreme conditions. But beneath the public narrative, there were whispers of something far more sinister, far more profound. Imagine a fleet of ships slicing through the frozen waters, aircraft soaring over endless white plains, men and women confronting a land that does not forgive mistakes. They were trained for war, yet the enemy they would face was unlike any human opponent. Some spoke of invisible forces, objects in the sky that defied physics, and a cold that seemed almost alive, resisting their every advance. The psychological toll was immense. Men wrote in their journals about dreams where ice moved like liquid, where voices whispered across the tundra, where shadows of impossible shapes loomed just out of sight. Antarctica, in all its terrifying beauty, was both a playground and a prison. Every expedition had felt the weight of its isolation, the oppressive silence that presses down like a living thing. Yet for those involved in Operation Highjump, this silence was more than atmospheric. It was almost conspiratorial, as if the continent itself were guarding something humanity was never meant to uncover. Every expedition report hinted at strange encounters, yet the full picture was carefully, deliberately hidden. It is difficult to describe the emotional landscape of men who faced the Antarctic wilderness during Highjump. Courage was a necessity, but so was fear, or mingled with dread. They saw beauty in the infinite white plains, but also a lurking, ineffable danger. For every frozen cliff that sparkled like diamonds under the low sun, there was a crevasse that could swallow a man whole without warning. For every moment of camaraderie in heated tents, there was a night outside where temperatures plummeted and howling winds sounded almost like voices warning them to turn back. And yet, this was only the beginning. Beneath the ice, beneath the silence, something waited. Something that would challenge every assumption these explorers had about their world. The mission was never just about geography or about testing aircraft and ships in extreme conditions. Somewhere, beneath layers of ice that could be hundreds of meters thick, secrets lay dormant. Secrets that some believe had been planted there during the darkest days of the Second World War, or perhaps even earlier, by forces whose reach extended beyond any nation or ideology. As the ships of Operation Highjump carved their way through icy seas, one could almost feel the continent's indifference. It was beautiful, lethal, and silent, a frozen curtain hiding a history the world had not yet earned the right to see. What they would find, or think they found, would blur the line between exploration and confrontation, between the known and the unimaginable. And when they finally returned, their tales would be filtered, sanitized, and in some cases erased entirely. The true story would remain hidden, a puzzle for historians, conspiracy theorists, and the curious alike. But the curtain had already been lifted, even if just slightly. The shadows beneath the ice, the frozen echoes of a secret war, were stirring. And those who dared to look too closely would realize that Antarctica was not simply a land of ice. It was a vault, a repository of knowledge, fear, and power. What lay beneath could alter history, challenge beliefs, and redefine humanity's understanding of its own courage and limitations. And so the question remained, chilling and impossible to ignore. What secrets lie beneath the ice, hidden from the world, waiting for those brave, or foolish, enough to uncover them? However, the repeated convergence of anomalies, subterranean tunnels, geometric ice structures, light phenomena, and unknown craft, makes purely natural interpretations difficult to reconcile with the collected evidence. The interplay of natural and potentially artificial elements deepens the enigma, creating a puzzle in which human understanding is perpetually challenged. Psychological factors and the extremity of the environment also contribute to speculation. Isolation, fatigue, extreme cold, and prolonged exposure to harsh conditions can amplify perception and heighten sensitivity to anomalies. Some theorists argue that the combination of stress and extreme conditions may have influenced the way phenomena were interpreted by the fleet. Yet the multiplicity of independent accounts, corroborated by instruments and multiple crew members, indicates that while perception may have played a role, it cannot fully account for the documented anomalies. There was clearly something extraordinary taking place, whether natural, artificial, or otherwise. Cultural and historical interpretations of Antarctica as a mysterious and remote frontier also influence speculation. Over centuries, myths of hidden lands, lost civilizations, and secret knowledge have been associated with polar regions. In this context, the discoveries of Operation Highjump, the ice fortress, subterranean tunnels, and unknown craft resonate with long-standing archetypes of hidden knowledge and secret power. The mission's events can be read not only as concrete historical phenomena, but also as episodes that tap into deep-seated human fascination with the unknown, blending empirical observation with imagination and cultural narrative. The sudden evacuation of the fleet, previously discussed in Section 20, adds fuel to speculative interpretations. Was the withdrawal due to environmental hazards alone, or was it triggered by forces or entities that the fleet could neither understand nor control? The timing of the evacuation, coinciding with encounters with unknown craft, energy anomalies, and proximity to the ice fortress, suggests a purposeful intervention. Some theorists argue that the evacuation demonstrates human vulnerability in the face of unknown intelligence, reinforcing the sense that Antarctica was, and perhaps remains, an active theater for extraordinary phenomena. The cover-up and classification of reports, described in Section 21, have only amplified speculation. By restricting access to critical documentation, authorities created a vacuum in which conjecture thrives. Declassified fragments, redacted logs, and partial photographs provide tantalizing glimpses of phenomena. But without complete transparency, the public and researchers are left to reconstruct events from incomplete evidence. This lack of closure ensures that Antarctica remains a site of enduring mystery, where theories proliferate and the boundaries between history, science, and conjecture blur. For contemporary researchers and enthusiasts, these speculations serve as both challenge and invitation. They compel a reconsideration of historical narratives, encourage careful analysis of anomalous evidence, and foster curiosity about the unexplored dimensions of the Antarctic. Whether one favors technological, extraterrestrial, natural, or hybrid explanations, the theories surrounding Operation Highjump underscore the complexity of the expedition and its potential to reshape understanding of history, human capability, and the unknown. Ultimately, the theories and speculations surrounding Operation Highjump reflect a human need to interpret the unexplained. They reveal our desire to make sense of extraordinary experiences, our fascination with hidden knowledge, and our willingness to confront uncertainty. The frozen continent, with its ice fortress, subterranean tunnels, unknown craft, and enigmatic phenomena, serves as a mirror for our curiosity, imagination, and ambition. Each theory, whether grounded in historical possibility, extraterrestrial speculation, or environmental science, represents an attempt to navigate the liminal space between the known and the unknown. The enduring power of these theories lies not in their definitive proof, but in their capacity to inspire wonder, critical inquiry, and emotional engagement. They challenge us to imagine what might lie beneath the ice, to question the completeness of our historical understanding, and to confront the limits of human perception and technology. In doing so, they keep the legacy of Operation Highjump alive, ensuring that the expedition continues to captivate imaginations, provoke debate, and illuminate the profound mysteries that still lie hidden in the Antarctic. In the end, speculation is not merely idle curiosity. It is a vital part of exploring the extraordinary. The theories arising from Operation Highjump invite reflection on the intersection of human ambition, technological capability, and the enduring mysteries of the natural and perhaps supernatural world. They remind us that even in the modern era, there are places where the unknown prevails, where secrets lie beneath the surface, and where the line between reality and possibility is perpetually blurred. For those who study, research, or simply dream about Antarctica, the mission's enigmas remain a source of awe, intrigue, and enduring fascination. The guns of World War II had fallen silent, but the echoes of that war reverberated far beyond the battlefields of Europe and the Pacific. Nations were exhausted yet untrusting, rebuilding their cities while keeping one eye on old enemies and new threats. Borders had shifted, alliances had crumbled, and technologies once deemed impossible had been unleashed upon the world. Yet even in victory, a shadow lingered, a war that never truly ended. It was a war fought not just with armies and ships, but with secrets, intelligence, and ambition. And in the icy South, this silent conflict was about to take a shape that no one anticipated. The Second World War had revealed the terrifying potential of human ingenuity when applied to destruction. Rocket technology, aerial combat, coded messages, and intelligence networks reached heights previously unimaginable. But with the war's end, the global race for supremacy did not pause. It merely shifted to the shadows. Governments scrambled to capture scientists, steal plans, and gain any advantage that might tip the balance in the next, unseen confrontation. It was not a war of nations in the traditional sense. It was a war of knowledge, of secrets, of the unknown. In this tense post-war environment, Antarctica emerged as more than a frozen continent. For decades, it had been dismissed as a barren wasteland, unfit for life and irrelevant to human conflict. But suddenly, its isolation became its greatest asset. A place no one monitored, where no one dared venture in force, offered a perfect stage for clandestine operations. And whispers began circulating among military circles. Nazi scientists had fled south, carrying with them projects and technologies that could rewrite the rules of warfare. Some spoke of secret bases hidden beneath glacier, where experiments continued far from prying eyes. Others hinted at encounters with unexplained aerial phenomena, machines that seemed beyond the reach of any nation. It was in this context that Operation Highjump was conceived. Officially, it was an expedition, a scientific and exploratory mission intended to test personnel, ships, and equipment in extreme conditions. Unofficially, it was a reconnaissance of a land that might conceal dangers humanity had yet to understand. The United States Navy dispatched the largest Antarctic fleet ever assembled. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, and hundreds of support vessels. Thousands of men, trained for war, were sent into a world so alien that even the most seasoned explorers felt the cold grip of fear. The psychological stakes were as high as the physical ones. Every officer and sailor knew that this was more than just exploration. Diaries and reports from those aboard reveal a profound unease, a sense that something waited beneath the ice, watching, testing, and perhaps even planning. For many, the Antarctic was no longer a land. It was a battlefield of the mind, a place where courage was measured not by gunfire, but by the ability to endure the unknown. Men who had faced bombs and bullets in Europe now confronted a terror that was silent, invisible, and terrifyingly patient. The concept of a war without combatants, a war fought in shadows and silence, was foreign to most people. Yet Antarctica offered the perfect theater. No one could see you, no one could hear you, and yet everything could strike without warning. Ships reported icebergs that seemed to move unnaturally. Aircraft experienced unexplained malfunctions, and strange lights appeared over the frozen plains, lights that could not be traced to any known source. Those who observed them often described a mixture of awe and terror, an instinctive understanding that they were witnessing something that defied human logic. As the fleet advanced further south, the tension escalated. Commanders issued orders for caution, yet the men could feel the subtle pressure of a war that had already begun. Every movement, every flight, every landing could trigger unforeseen consequences. It was a war without enemies, yet no one doubted that an invisible adversary watched their every move. And in this tension, the Antarctic itself became a character, a silent, immutable force, testing the limits of human resolve and endurance. Historians would later struggle to categorize what happened during Highjump. Was it a reconnaissance mission, a test of military might, or an encounter with forces beyond human comprehension? Eyewitness accounts suggest all three. Pilots reported flying into storms that seemed almost sentient. Radar operators tracked objects that defied explanation, and surface crews found structures that could not have been built by any known civilization. The line between reality and the imagination blurred, leaving those involved with a lingering sense that the war had shifted from the continents of men to the frozen frontiers of the unknown. Yet the most chilling aspect of this silent war was its secrecy. Reports were classified, photographs were censored, and many first-hand accounts were buried in government archives. The world would never know the full extent of what occurred, or what might have been discovered. Those who returned spoke in hushed tones, hinting at events that could unsettle even the most rational minds. The notion that the war had ended was comforting, yet profoundly misleading. In Antarctica, in the cold and the silence, the war persisted, invisible but no less real. And so, the men of Operation Highjump became soldiers in a conflict that had no name, fighting an enemy that had no face. Their courage was tested not by bombs or bullets, but by uncertainty, isolation, and the chilling awareness that some secrets were too dangerous to be revealed. The frozen continent had claimed the stage, and humanity had stepped into a theater of intrigue that few would ever understand. By the time the fleet turned back toward familiar waters, the echoes of this secret war had already begun to fade into legend. Yet the Antarctic remained, indifferent and eternal, holding within its ice a story the world was not ready to hear. And as historians, theorists, and curious minds would later piece together fragments of Operation Highjump, one undeniable truth would emerge. The Second World War may have ended, but the shadows it cast stretched far beyond Europe and the Pacific, into the white, desolate heart of a continent that refuses to surrender its secrets. Richard E. Byrd was no ordinary man. To the world, he was an explorer, a naval officer, a pioneer who had conquered the skies and the frozen landscapes of the Antarctic. Yet beneath the polished medals and official accolades lay a man attuned to secrets, a figure whose life seemed to orbit the thin line between the known and the unknowable. His name would later become synonymous with adventure, but among those who served under him, whispers persisted, whispers of a man who saw more than he let on, who understood the subtle and hidden forces at play in places the world had not yet dared to tread. Byrd's career was defined by extremes. He flew into storms where the heavens and the earth seemed to merge, navigated seas that no map had charted, and endured temperatures so low they could freeze a man's thoughts before his body. Yet even in these conditions, his vision extended beyond survival. He carried with him an almost prophetic sense of danger, a premonition of events that many dismissed as the eccentric musings of a seasoned explorer. He spoke in terms of forces and threats that seemed larger than life, hinting at challenges not merely of geography, but of hidden knowledge, hidden technology, and perhaps even hidden civilizations. Those who served with Byrd often remarked on his duality. In public, he was charismatic, confident, and calm, commanding respect and inspiring loyalty. Yet in private, he was contemplative, almost haunted. Diaries and personal letters reveal a man wrestling with the enormity of what he might encounter in the Antarctic. He wrote of lights that defied explanation, of landscapes that seemed to shift like illusions, and of an icy silence that carried a weight no human had ever known. It was as though the continent itself spoke to him, revealing glimpses of a hidden history layered beneath the surface of ice and snow. When Operation Highjump was conceived in 1946, Byrd was chosen to lead the mission. On paper, the assignment was a straightforward naval expedition: map uncharted regions, test equipment in extreme conditions, and conduct training exercises. Yet Byrd's own reports hinted at a deeper purpose. He warned superiors of potential dangers that went beyond weather and terrain. In press conferences, he hinted at the presence of unknown forces in the southern reaches, warning the world that the polar regions hold the key to a war unlike any other. To most, his words were cryptic, almost metaphorical. To those who knew him, they were chillingly literal. Byrd's reputation had been forged in fire long before he reached Antarctica. He had been decorated for acts of courage, had flown pioneering missions over the North and South Poles, and had a lifetime of experience navigating both human and natural perils. Yet even with this history, he approached Operation Highjump with caution. He understood that the Antarctic was a land of extremes, a place where nature itself could become an enemy. But more than that, he sensed an unseen presence, something that made the continent feel alive, conscious, and dangerous. This intuition would shape every decision he made during the mission, guiding the fleet through storms, ice fields, and encounters that would later defy conventional explanation. Accounts from the operation suggest Byrd was more than a commander, he was a sentinel. Pilots recall his sharp eyes scanning the horizon for anomalies, listening for whispers in static-laden radio transmissions, and piecing together patterns that seemed invisible to others. On the ground, he moved among his men with an uncanny awareness, sensing fear, fatigue, and suspicion before it could manifest. Some officers reported that Byrd often paused in silence, staring into the whiteness as if he could see something the rest of them could not. It was this combination of courage, intuition, and obsession with the unknown that set him apart and would make his name inseparable from the mysteries of Antarctica. Yet Byrd's own warnings were met with skepticism. When he returned from Operation Highjump, he spoke publicly of potential enemy forces in the South, hinting at the unimaginable consequences if humanity were unprepared. The press largely ignored him or dismissed his statements as hyperbole, and official records were sanitized. But fragments of his journals and private accounts suggest a man who had glimpsed something profoundly unsettling, a presence or intelligence hidden beneath the ice that was far beyond human understanding. It is this duality that defines Byrd's legacy. To the public, he was an explorer and hero, a man of courage and achievement. To those who dig into the shadowed corners of history, he becomes a guardian figure, a witness to secrets that were never meant to surface. He carried knowledge that could have reshaped military strategy, global power dynamics, and even humanity's understanding of the natural world. And yet, like Antarctica itself, Byrd remained enigmatic, leaving just enough clues to stir imagination, but never revealing the full story. Byrd's experiences would later fuel speculation, conspiracy theories, and the kind of historical intrigue that historians still debate today. Some argue he had encountered remnants of Nazi operations in Antarctica, advanced technologies, or even evidence of lost civilizations. Others suggest he may have witnessed phenomena that defy conventional physics, encounters with craft and forces that remain unexplained. Whether all these accounts are true, partially true, or wildly exaggerated, they converge on one undeniable fact. Admiral Richard E. Byrd was the human bridge to a world frozen in ice, a world that dared to challenge everything known about history, science, and human courage. As Operation Highjump commenced under his command, Byrd's presence was more than symbolic. He was both leader and interpreter of the unknown, the man who could translate what the Antarctic revealed into something the human mind could comprehend. And yet, even he must have known that some truths would remain buried, locked beneath layers of ice, secrecy, and fear. The men who served under him would carry these impressions with them, haunted by glimpses of a reality that official reports would never acknowledge. Byrd's story is the story of the Antarctic itself, a mixture of awe and terror, brilliance and danger, courage and uncertainty. He understood the human stakes, the fragility of life in extreme conditions, and the magnitude of secrets waiting beneath the surface. His warnings, his observations, and his quiet obsession with the unknown set the stage for a mission that would become one of the most enigmatic chapters in modern history. And as the fleet pressed deeper into the frozen expanse, guided by Byrd's steady hand and unwavering intuition, one question lingered over the ice like a storm cloud. What had Byrd seen in the shadows of the Antarctic, and how close had humanity come to confronting forces it could barely imagine? In 1946, the world was still reeling from the devastation of the Second World War. Cities were rebuilding, nations were negotiating fragile alliances, and the specter of future conflicts loomed over governments and military strategists alike. In this climate of tension and uncertainty, the United States Navy conceived a mission so ambitious it bordered on audacious, even reckless. Officially, it was Operation Highjump, a naval expedition to explore and map the uncharted regions of Antarctica, to train personnel in extreme cold, and to test the limits of human endurance. But beneath the surface, there were whispers, hints of purposes that were never fully disclosed, objectives that suggested the continent held secrets far beyond simple geography. Planning for Operation Highjump was meticulous and unprecedented. The Navy gathered a fleet of extraordinary scale, unprecedented in peacetime, consisting of aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, icebreakers, and hundreds of auxiliary support vessels. Thousands of men, carefully selected and trained for extreme conditions, were assigned to the operation. Scientists, pilots, engineers, and soldiers were brought together, their expertise spanning fields from meteorology to aviation, from naval warfare to communications. To the public, it was a mission of exploration and research, a demonstration of American might in peacetime. But for those involved, there was a growing sense that they were stepping into a theater far different from anything previously encountered, a stage where human curiosity would meet the unknown. Admiral Richard E. Byrd was placed in command, his reputation as an Antarctic pioneer lending credibility to the venture. Yet even Byrd understood that this mission was not ordinary. The fleet was equipped with advanced technology, much of it experimental, aircraft capable of extreme cold weather operation, ice-resistant vessels, and communications equipment that pushed the boundaries of contemporary science. Maps were meticulously drawn, supply lines calculated, and contingencies for disaster were prepared. And yet, despite all planning, a pervasive unease remained. Antarctica was not simply a land of ice. It was a land of uncertainty, where storms could appear without warning, magnetic fields could play tricks on navigation, and the landscape itself seemed almost alive, shifting beneath human observation. The mission's objectives, as stated publicly, were scientific. Teams would photograph and map vast regions, study weather patterns, and conduct geological surveys. Aircraft would test navigational systems in extreme conditions, while ships would chart new sea routes through ice-choked waters. To the press and the public, it was a heroic adventure, a testament to human ingenuity and courage. But private reports suggest other, more secretive motives. Intelligence suggested that remnants of the Third Reich had fled to the southern continent during the final days of the war, establishing hidden bases, possibly experimenting with advanced technology or weapons. Some officers whispered about radar anomalies, unexplained lights in the sky, and evidence of structures buried under the ice, all pointing to a presence the Navy was determined to investigate. The scale of preparation reflected the seriousness of these concerns. Training exercises took place in extreme cold weather environments across North America, with crews practicing survival, navigation, and emergency response. Men were briefed on the psychological strains of isolation and monotony, warned that Antarctic storms could immobilize even the most prepared teams for days at a time. Aircraft and equipment were stress-tested in freezing temperatures, subjected to conditions intended to mimic the harsh reality they would face. Every precaution was taken, yet none could fully account for the unknown, those anomalies that would later become the source of intrigue and speculation. There was an almost theatrical grandeur to the conception of the mission. Ships gliding through ice-packed seas, aircraft cutting through white clouds over endless plains, men confronting an environment so extreme that every step felt like a gamble against mortality. But beneath this spectacle lay the unspoken tension. What would they find? Would they encounter merely the desolate beauty of the Antarctic, or had the continent become a repository of secrets too dangerous for humanity to understand? These questions haunted planners and personnel alike, shaping the mission's execution even before it began. The secrecy surrounding certain objectives added to the mystery. Many details of the operation were classified, withheld even from participants. Some teams were briefed only on their immediate tasks, never understanding the broader scope of the mission. Supply routes, communication protocols, and even flight plans were tightly controlled, creating a sense of controlled chaos. In effect, the mission was both exploration and reconnaissance, a carefully orchestrated dance along the edge of human knowledge and fear. The Antarctic itself loomed over the operation like a silent sentinel. No human eyes had charted its interior in any meaningful detail, and much of the terrain remained a mystery. Crevasses, ice cliffs, subglacial lakes, and mountain ranges were unmapped, and the environment was as much an adversary as any potential enemy. Storms could rise without warning, magnetic anomalies could scramble instruments, and the sheer scale of the continent meant that even minor mistakes could become fatal. The Navy, aware of these risks, insisted on meticulous preparation, yet nothing could fully mitigate the psychological impact of isolation, cold, and the ever-present sense of being observed by an unseen force. As the fleet prepared to depart, the atmosphere was a mix of excitement, fear, and curiosity. Families waved goodbye, officers issued final instructions, and the world remained largely unaware of the true stakes. To many, it was an expedition, a daring adventure at the edge of human experience. To those aboard, it was a test of courage and endurance, and, for some, a confrontation with forces that challenged the boundaries of reality. Admiral Byrd, at the center of it all, carried the weight of responsibility not just for the men and machines under his command, but for the unknown itself, a responsibility that would become increasingly tangible as the fleet pressed further into the frozen south. Operation Highjump was conceived at the intersection of ambition, secrecy, and human curiosity. It was a mission that promised knowledge, yet threatened danger, that sought discovery, yet flirted with the incomprehensible. And as the ships and aircraft set course for the Antarctic horizon, one truth became clear. This was no ordinary expedition. Somewhere in the endless ice, forces, known and unknown, awaited. And the men of Highjump were about to step into a theater of intrigue, mystery, and danger that the world would only glimpse decades later, through fragments of reports, whispers, and legends. The scale of Operation Highjump was unprecedented. For a mission officially described as exploration and training, the fleet that gathered in 1946 was astonishing, a display of military power and human ambition unlike anything seen in peacetime. Ships of every kind, aircraft carriers, destroyers, icebreakers, submarines, and hundreds of support vessels, were assembled and outfitted for a journey into the unknown. The sight alone would have been enough to inspire awe. Yet for those aboard, there was an unspoken sense that this mission was unlike any naval operation before. Something waited beyond the horizon, something the fleet had been sent to confront, though no one would openly speak its name. The aircraft carriers were the crown jewels of the fleet. They carried planes modified for extreme cold, designed to take off and land on icy runways that might vanish at any moment under a sudden storm or shifting ice. Pilots underwent grueling simulations, learning to navigate over frozen plains where landmarks were scarce and magnetic anomalies threatened to turn even the most reliable compass useless. These aviators were not only explorers but potential warriors, sent into a landscape where the very environment could become a lethal adversary. Destroyers flanked the fleet like guardians, sleek and powerful, cutting through ice-packed seas with precision. Submarines, equipped for stealth and reconnaissance, lurked beneath the surface, capable of traversing the hidden world beneath the ice. Each vessel carried its own crew of specialists, engineers, navigators, radiomen, and scientists, all trained to respond to emergencies, yet constantly aware that in a place like Antarctica, even the smallest error could have catastrophic consequences. The fleet was a machine of immense capability, yet fragile when faced with the unknown. Even the support vessels were extraordinary. Icebreakers, reinforced with thick steel hulls, plowed through frozen waters, carving paths where none existed. Supply ships carried thousands of tons of provisions, fuel, and equipment, ensuring that the fleet could operate far from traditional ports for months at a time. Each ship was a lifeline, a fragile thread connecting the men to the rest of the world. And yet, despite all the preparation and technology, there was no way to fully control the environment, no way to predict the strange anomalies that awaited them in the southernmost reaches of the globe. The men themselves were a unique breed. They were chosen not only for skill but for resilience, courage, and the ability to operate in extreme conditions. Some were veterans of World War II, hardened by battle, yet none had faced the challenges of Antarctica. Others were scientists and engineers, untested in the chaos of the open sea or the fury of polar storms. Together, they formed a complex network of human endeavor, each individual a critical part of a larger, unprecedented operation. The psychological strain was immense. Isolation, cold, constant danger, and the sense that they were venturing into a world that had been deliberately hidden from humanity combined to create a tension that few could fully articulate. The technology deployed was another marvel. Aircraft were equipped with advanced navigation systems and specialized instruments to measure temperature, pressure, and magnetic fields. Ships carried state-of-the-art radar, sonar, and communications equipment. Even the clothing and survival gear were meticulously designed, from insulated uniforms to portable heating units capable of sustaining life in temperatures that could drop below -70 degrees Fahrenheit. Every detail was calculated to maximize survival, yet the fleet would soon discover that even the most advanced equipment could fail in the face of Antarctica's extremes. Despite the meticulous planning, there was an almost theatrical sense to the fleet's assembly. Observers onshore described a scene of extraordinary scale. Ships gliding across icy waters, planes taxiing on makeshift runways, and men moving with a sense of both purpose and trepidation. To the casual eye, it might have seemed a display of human ingenuity, a testament to post-war achievement. But for those involved, the stakes were much higher. Every vessel, every plane, every sailor was stepping into a world where the laws of normalcy did not fully apply, where the unknown waited like a predator in the white silence. Reports from the fleet hint at the almost uncanny atmosphere of the operation. Officers described feeling watched, sensing an intelligence that seemed to study their every move. Radar operators reported anomalies, objects appearing and disappearing without explanation, movements that defied physics. Pilots spoke of lights in the sky that did not correspond to any known aircraft or celestial body. On the surface, crew members encountered ice formations that seemed almost geometric, structures that hinted at design rather than nature. Each of these experiences added to a growing sense that the mission was more than exploration. The fleet was not merely navigating the Antarctic. It was confronting something that challenged the very notion of what was real. Even as the ships departed from familiar waters, the psychological tension was palpable. The men of Operation Highjump had been trained for war, yet the enemy they faced was unlike any they had known. There were no gunships to fire upon, no soldiers to face, only the cold, the ice, and the invisible threats lurking in the distance. Storms could strike without warning, equipment could fail, and the landscape itself could turn deadly in a matter of moments. Yet beyond these physical challenges, there was the persistent question of what, or who, might be observing them. Some officers speculated that the Third Reich had left remnants of technology hidden in the south. Others whispered about phenomena that could not be explained by conventional science. The truth, as always, remained obscured by ice, secrecy, and fear. In many ways, the fleet itself became a character in this unfolding story. Each vessel, each aircraft, each man was a participant in a drama that extended far beyond their understanding. The fleet was a microcosm of human ambition, courage, and fragility, operating in a theater where the normal rules of engagement did not apply. And as they moved deeper into Antarctic waters, the sense of isolation intensified. The horizon seemed endless, the ice eternal, and the sky, bright with sun or dark with storm, held mysteries that could not be comprehended. Operation Highjump's fleet was more than a collection of ships and men. It was a statement of capability, ambition, and curiosity. But it was also a testament to human vulnerability in the face of forces that cannot be tamed or predicted. The fleet was equipped for battle, prepared for survival. Yet it would soon discover that Antarctica demanded more than skill and courage. It demanded respect, intuition, and an awareness of mysteries that had been hidden for centuries. As the ships steamed toward the southern horizon, a sense of foreboding hung over the operation. The frozen continent awaited, indifferent and eternal, its secrets buried beneath layers of ice that had never been disturbed. The men of Highjump were stepping into history, into a mission that would challenge their understanding of the natural world, test their courage, and confront them with enigmas that would remain unresolved for decades. And in the quiet moments, when the wind howled across the decks and the ice groaned beneath the hulls, one thought lingered in the minds of the crew. They were not merely explorers. They were witnesses to something far larger than themselves, a presence in the ice that would forever haunt the annals of Antarctic history. Antarctica is not merely a backdrop. It is an adversary, a living presence that shapes events as decisively as any human hand. For the men of Operation Highjump, the continent itself became a test of endurance, courage, and sanity. Storms rose without warning, icebergs shifted like silent giants, and winds carved the frozen landscape into jagged, impossible terrain. What seemed like a mappable, navigable expanse often revealed itself as a treacherous maze, and the crew quickly realized that the ice did not forgive mistakes. Every expedition into this realm felt like stepping onto a stage where nature, not humans, set the rules. From the moment the fleet approached the Antarctic coast, the challenges became immediately apparent. Even the most seasoned sailors had never encountered waters so densely packed with ice that moved in unpredictable patterns, shifting in response to tides, wind, and forces invisible to the naked eye. Ships strained against the grip of frozen barriers, hulls groaning and metal creaking under pressure. Icebreakers led the way, carving tenuous paths through a labyrinth of frozen hazards. Yet even they could not guarantee safety. A miscalculation of a single iceberg's trajectory could spell disaster for an entire vessel. Aircraft, too, faced relentless opposition. Pilots ascending over the plains found themselves buffeted by sudden katabatic winds, dense, gravity-driven gusts that could reach hurricane speeds and appear with terrifying suddenness. Magnetic anomalies wreaked havoc on navigation instruments, forcing crews to rely on instinct and training to avoid getting lost over an endless sea of white. Every flight was a gamble. The horizon might vanish into a blinding wall of snow, crevasses could open beneath landing zones, and temperatures could drop so low that engines failed and fuel froze. The ice was not a passive environment. It was a cunning opponent, testing skill, patience, and nerve at every turn. Reports from the fleet hint at the psychological weight of this opposition. Men wrote of exhaustion that was physical and mental, a fatigue that settled into bones and thoughts alike. Isolation was compounded by the knowledge that the environment could kill instantly, and the silence of the Antarctic often seemed deliberate, almost sentient. Radios crackled with static, planes disappeared into clouds for hours, and supply routes that should have been secure became perilous gauntlets. In the Antarctic, the familiar markers of civilization vanished, leaving nothing but white ice and the constant, oppressive presence of danger. Even seemingly ordinary tasks became monumental challenges. Survey teams attempting to map the coastline found the ice shifting beneath their feet, making measurements unreliable. Crews digging temporary camps or inspecting equipment were often caught in sudden storms, winds tearing tents and supplies from their hands. The ice and cold became as much an enemy as any potential adversary lurking in the shadows, relentless, impartial, and deadly. Survival depended not only on skill and technology but on intuition, resilience, and the ability to respect a power far greater than any human force. Some of the most unsettling reports describe phenomena that could not be explained by nature alone. Men spoke of ice formations that seemed deliberate, geometric, almost architectural, rising from the plains in impossible patterns. Shadows moved where none should exist, shapes appearing and disappearing with the shifting light. Pilots reported seeing glimmers on the horizon, reflections that did not correspond to any known object, sometimes moving against the wind or performing maneuvers beyond conventional physics. To the men, it became impossible to distinguish between the treacherous natural world and something else, something deliberate and unknown. The ice also claimed its toll in more tangible ways. Aircraft were damaged by sudden gusts and hidden crevasses. Ships were crushed or immobilized by unseen barriers, and men succumbed to frostbite and hypothermia despite the most advanced protective gear. Each loss reinforced the understanding that Antarctica was not merely an environment to explore, but a force to contend with, a challenge that tested the limits of human ingenuity, endurance, and courage. There was no room for arrogance, no margin for error. In the Antarctic, the ice fought back, and it did so with patience and precision. Yet amidst the danger, there was also awe. The Antarctic landscape is breathtaking, vast, and surreal. Jagged cliffs, frozen seas, and mountains rising like cathedrals from the ice create a scene of otherworldly beauty. Sunlight dances on the glacier, painting everything in blinding whites and deep blues. For those brave enough to venture into it, the continent offers moments of transcendent wonder, fleeting glimpses of nature in its purest, most unyielding form. It is a paradox, a place of both terror and beauty, where the line between the sublime and the dangerous is impossibly thin. As the fleet and their aircraft ventured deeper, the ice seemed almost intentional in its resistance, shaping their movements, testing their resolve, and leaving subtle clues that something, or someone, had been observing the southern continent long before humans arrived. Crew members reported a sense of being watched, a feeling that even in the vast emptiness, they were not alone. Whether these sensations were the result of isolation, fatigue, or something more, they added to the growing aura of mystery surrounding the mission. The ice was a barrier, a teacher, and perhaps a sentinel, guarding secrets humanity had yet to understand. For Admiral Byrd and his officers, the message was clear. Antarctica was no longer merely a blank canvas for exploration. It was a living, breathing force, capable of shaping events, testing human courage, and withholding truths far beyond immediate comprehension. Each storm, each shifting crevasse, each strange anomaly reinforced the sense that this was a theater of extremes, a place where human ambition and curiosity collided with an environment that demanded respect, adaptability, and reverence. And so, as the men of Operation Highjump pressed forward, they understood a fundamental truth. In Antarctica, survival was not guaranteed, mastery was impossible, and knowledge came at a cost. The ice was not merely cold and hard. It was intelligent, patient, and relentless. It tested every decision, every maneuver, and every ounce of courage. And somewhere beneath the frozen surface, secrets waited, secrets that would only reveal themselves to those who could endure the ice's unyielding embrace. The continent was a battleground, and the enemy was as invisible as it was inevitable. Even as the guns of World War II fell silent, the shadow of Nazi ambition lingered like a specter over the globe. Europe lay in ruins, cities smoldered, and millions mourned the dead. Yet some whispers suggested that the Third Reich had not vanished entirely, that its reach had extended far beyond the traditional theaters of war. Among these whispers, Antarctica became a focal point. Rumors circulated that the Nazis, in the final months of the war, had sought refuge in the frozen South, establishing secret bases where their most audacious projects could continue beyond Allied scrutiny. The idea seemed impossible to most. How could a defeated regime, collapsing under the weight of military defeat, transport men, machines, and resources to one of the most inhospitable regions on Earth? And yet, tantalizing fragments of evidence, scattered maps, testimonies from returning scientists, and intercepted communications hinted that something extraordinary had occurred. The Nazis were obsessed with secrecy and the pursuit of technological dominance, and Antarctica, with its isolation and immensity, offered a perfect sanctuary. Whether for scientific research, weapons testing, or a hidden military foothold, the continent became a repository for projects humanity was not yet ready to understand. Operation Highjump, some theorists argue, was as much a response to these whispers as it was an exploration mission. Intelligence suggested that the Allies were aware of potential remnants of Nazi operations in the southern continent. Some officers speculated about subterranean bases, elaborate networks of tunnels beneath glacier, and possibly advanced technology hidden away in the frozen expanse. For the men of Highjump, these were not idle speculations, they were warnings. Every flight, every survey, every scouting mission carried the undercurrent of this silent, unseen enemy. The possibility that remnants of a defeated but dangerous regime still lingered in the ice transformed the Antarctic into a battleground of shadows. Accounts from pilots and crew hint at an atmosphere charged with tension and unease. Strange lights on the horizon, objects that defied conventional explanations, and untraceable radar signals became recurring phenomena. Some believed these were evidence of Nazi craft, machines possibly decades ahead of their time, concealed in the icy labyrinths of Antarctica. Others suggested more enigmatic possibilities, phenomena linked to natural anomalies, or perhaps remnants of technologies beyond contemporary understanding. For the men of Highjump, every anomaly deepened the sense that they were not merely exploring, but confronting the remnants of a war that refused to end. The psychological stakes were immense. Soldiers trained for combat in Europe or the Pacific found themselves facing an enemy that was invisible, elusive, and possibly more advanced than any force they had encountered. Pilots flew into storms that seemed unnaturally focused, ships became trapped by ice in patterns that felt deliberate, and crews reported a sensation of being watched, as though the very continent itself harbored observers. The whispers of the Third Reich transformed from speculation into a palpable tension, a shadow hanging over every maneuver and decision. Some historians argue that these Nazi remnants were experimenting with technologies far beyond conventional weapons. There are unverified claims of aerial discs, craft capable of astonishing speeds and maneuvers, and devices that could manipulate electromagnetic fields. Whether these reports are fact, exaggeration, or the product of psychological strain in extreme conditions, they contributed to a growing mythos surrounding Antarctica. To those on the ground and in the air, the continent became a testing ground, a place where the extraordinary, the terrifying, and the incomprehensible seemed to converge. The idea of a hidden Nazi presence in Antarctica also intersected with more esoteric theories. Some researchers speculate that the Third Reich, fascinated with occultism and alternative sciences, may have sought the Antarctic as a sanctuary for projects that combine technology with ideology. Maps depicting secret bases, testimonies about unusual structures, and reports of strange signals all hint at a landscape deliberately altered or utilized by human hands with knowledge that surpassed ordinary comprehension. To the men of Operation Highjump, such speculations added both weight and fear to the already formidable task of navigating the frozen continent. Admiral Byrd himself, though a man of reason and experience, reportedly took these whispers seriously. His warnings to superiors about potential enemy activity in the South were not mere formalities. They reflected a genuine awareness of the risks posed by remnants of Nazi operations. In private briefings and later in reports, he emphasized caution, the unpredictability of the environment, and the possibility that the Antarctic held secrets far beyond exploration or mapping. The combination of nature's hostility and potential human threat created a tension that would define the operation, shaping decisions, strategy, and the morale of the men. The myths surrounding the Third Reich in Antarctica were amplified by the difficulty of verifying information. Few records survived, many were classified, and first-hand accounts were often inconsistent or deliberately vague. Yet the persistence of these whispers, coupled with unexplained phenomena experienced by high-jump personnel, lent them an eerie plausibility. It was as if the Antarctic had become a repository not just for ice and snow, but for secrets humanity had neither the knowledge nor the courage to fully confront. The Third Reich, though defeated in conventional terms, seemed to linger like a phantom in the frozen south, challenging the assumptions of those sent to explore its desolate expanses. Even today, the story evokes fascination, fear, and speculation. Were the Nazis truly experimenting with advanced technology beneath the ice? Were there hidden bases, subterranean cities, or devices beyond contemporary understanding? And most hauntingly, if such operations existed, what became of them? For the men of Operation Highjump, the uncertainty was tangible, a constant companion as they ventured deeper into the unknown. Every radar anomaly, every shifting ice formation, every unexplained light became a potential clue and a potential threat. As the fleet pressed further south, the whispers of the Third Reich became intertwined with the broader mysteries of Antarctica itself. The ice, the storms, the magnetic anomalies, and the strange lights all contributed to an environment where human perception struggled to discern reality from possibility. To the men aboard, it was clear that the frozen continent was more than a scientific challenge. It was a theater for secrets, a silent stage where the remnants of a defeated but dangerous ideology might still linger. The ice was relentless, the threats invisible, and the stakes unimaginable. And so, the story of Operation Highjump cannot be fully told without acknowledging these whispers. The mission was not merely about mapping or testing. It was a confrontation with history's shadows, a dance along the edge of comprehension, and an encounter with the unknown. The Third Reich, though vanquished in Europe, seemed to haunt the southernmost continent, leaving traces that were invisible yet impossible to ignore. For those who sailed, flew, and lived through the operation, the Antarctic was no longer a land of ice. It was a repository of secrets, a challenge to human courage, and a reminder that some wars never truly end. The roar of engines, the tension in the air, and the vast expanse of white below. This was the world of the Operation Highjump pilots, a world where skill, courage, and nerves of steel were tested in ways unimaginable to anyone who had never faced the Antarctic. From the moment their planes lifted off the decks of the carriers, they entered an environment that defied comprehension. The horizon blended with the ice, creating an endless void where direction, distance, and scale lost all meaning. Every flight was a venture into the unknown, a test not only of technology but of human resolve. Pilots quickly realized that Antarctica did not behave like any other land they had flown over. Winds were capricious and violent, capable of tearing planes off course in moments. Magnetic anomalies played havoc with instruments, turning compasses and gyroscopes unreliable. The sun, which circled the sky without setting, created disorienting shadows that made the landscape appear alive, shifting beneath them as if the ice itself were in motion. Even the most experienced aviators found themselves questioning reality, navigating not just planes but perception itself. Early reconnaissance flights revealed a land both alien and hostile. Crevasses yawned without warning, cliffs of ice rose where none had been charted, and snowstorms could obliterate visibility in seconds. But it was not only the environment that unnerved the crews. Strange lights appeared in the sky, distant glimmers that moved with a speed and precision no conventional aircraft could achieve. Pilots described these phenomena as hovering, darting, and disappearing at will, leaving behind a sense of awe and dread. Some suggested these were secret Nazi craft, remnants of a defeated enemy now hidden in the Antarctic expanse. Others feared the possibility of forces far beyond human understanding. The mental strain of these flights was immense. Pilots and navigators had to contend with extreme cold that could numb fingers, cloud vision, and even interfere with radios and other equipment. They faced isolation in its purest form, miles of ice and sky with no shelter, no landmarks, and no guarantee of rescue if disaster struck. The sheer scale of Antarctica amplified every mistake, every miscalculation, every moment of hesitation. The continent was a crucible, testing both skill and character, demanding a presence of mind that could withstand the extraordinary and the terrifying alike. One of the most haunting aspects of these flights was the sense of being observed. Many pilots reported fleeting glimpses of objects in the distance, sometimes metallic, sometimes luminescent, that vanished before they could be approached. Radar occasionally picked up anomalies that could not be explained by natural formations or known aircraft. These experiences left even the most hardened veterans unsettled. The idea that they were entering a space already occupied, studied, or even controlled by an unknown intelligence became a recurring undercurrent in every mission. Yet despite the danger, there was exhilaration. Flying over Antarctica offered vistas unlike any on Earth. Jagged ice cliffs that seemed to pierce the sky, glacier that glittered like diamonds under the endless sun, and mountains that rose from the ice in surreal formations. The beauty was stark and alien, a reminder of the continent's indifference to human presence. It was a paradoxical blend of terror and awe, a realization that the pilots were witnessing a realm that remained almost entirely untouched by mankind, yet filled with hints of secrets hidden beneath the frozen surface. Every mission carried elements of discovery and danger. Pilots photographed and mapped regions that had never been seen, noting anomalies in ice formations and potential landing sites for future expeditions. At the same time, each flight was a test of endurance, both physically and mentally. Hypothermia, frostbite, equipment failure, and disorientation were constant threats. Some planes returned with damage from sudden storms. Others returned with stories that seemed almost fantastical, of objects moving with impossible speed or formations that seemed deliberately arranged. The line between reality and perception blurred, and the pilots became chroniclers of an Antarctic that was both tangible and otherworldly. Radio transmissions became lifelines, connecting men in the air with those on the ground and aboard ships. Yet even these communications were fraught with tension. Interference was constant, sometimes caused by magnetic anomalies, sometimes by static that seemed almost purposeful. Messages could be delayed, garbled, or lost entirely, leaving crews to rely on instinct and training. The silence that sometimes followed, a vast expanse of white with no sound but wind and the hum of engines, was oppressive, a reminder that the continent's hostility was as much psychological as physical. There were moments when the extraordinary pierced through the veil of normality. Pilots reported objects descending from the sky at impossible speeds, disappearing into the ice plains, or hovering in place as if observing them. Shadows moved across glacier in ways that defied logic, and some described structures that seemed deliberately constructed beneath the ice. For those on the ground, these reports were met with skepticism. Yet for the men who saw them firsthand, the encounters left indelible impressions, haunting their memories and shaping the narrative of Highjump for decades to come. Admiral Byrd, overseeing these flights from his command posts, understood the magnitude of what was occurring. He knew the men faced not only the dangers of ice and storm but the possibility of encountering phenomena beyond conventional understanding. His briefings emphasized caution, observation, and discipline, yet he also instilled a sense of purpose, to document, to explore, and to understand a continent that refused to be tamed. Byrd's leadership was both practical and psychological, guiding men through a realm where courage and rationality were constantly tested. The flights of Operation Highjump were more than reconnaissance. They were encounters with the unknown. Every crevice, every light, every anomaly became part of a narrative that stretched beyond maps and coordinates, touching on secrets humanity may never fully comprehend. Pilots returned with photographs, sketches, and stories, each adding to a growing sense that Antarctica was not simply a land of ice, but a place where history, technology, and the extraordinary intersected. It was a realm where the rules of the familiar no longer applied, where every flight into the white unknown carried the potential for discovery, and the risk of revelation too profound to articulate. By the end of the first wave of flights, one reality had crystallized. The Antarctic was far more than an environment. It was an active participant in the mission, shaping events, testing limits, and revealing glimpses of secrets long hidden beneath the ice. The pilots of Operation Highjump became witnesses to this frozen theater, their courage and skill stretched to the edge of human capability. And somewhere beneath the surface, hidden from all but the most vigilant observers, mysteries waited, ready to challenge everything humanity thought it knew about war, technology, and the unknown. As Operation Highjump pressed further into the frozen continent, reports of strange encounters began to accumulate, experiences that defied logic, challenged perception, and unsettled even the most seasoned personnel. What the men of Highjump saw, heard, and sometimes barely comprehended suggested that Antarctica was more than a hostile environment. It was a stage upon which the boundaries between reality, speculation, and the extraordinary blurred. Every crevasse, storm, and glacier became a potential site of discovery, a theater for phenomena that hinted at something far larger than the mission's stated objectives. Pilots reported aerial phenomena that could not be easily explained. Bright lights appeared at impossible angles, darting with precision beyond the capability of conventional aircraft. Sometimes these lights hovered silently. Other times they moved in patterns that suggested intelligence, as if observing the fleet, recording movements, and reacting to human presence. Some pilots described these lights suddenly vanishing or accelerating at speeds that defied physics, leaving a chilling sense of vulnerability and awe. Radar operators corroborated some of these sightings, noting blips that appeared and disappeared with no logical trajectory, reinforcing the notion that the fleet was being observed or perhaps tested by unknown forces. On the ground, men encountered phenomena equally perplexing. Geological teams, tasked with mapping ice formations and crevasses, occasionally came across structures that seemed too precise to be natural. Geometric patterns carved into the ice, straight lines intersecting at perfect angles, and formations resembling walls or tunnels challenged their understanding of Antarctic geology. Some reported hearing faint, mechanical noises beneath the ice, as if machinery, or life, was operating in a hidden world below the frozen surface. These encounters were rare, fleeting, and often dismissed officially, yet the men who experienced them carried the memory with them long after the operation ended. Ships, too, were not immune to anomalies. Icebreakers navigating the frozen seas sometimes reported movements in the distance that could not be explained by currents or ice flows. Shadows appeared where none should exist, shifting in ways that suggested deliberation. Crew members aboard destroyers and supply vessels spoke of instruments behaving erratically, compasses spinning without reason, and radios capturing faint, unintelligible transmissions. To some, it felt as though the continent itself was responding to the fleet's intrusion, a living presence subtly manipulating perception and circumstance. The psychological impact of these encounters was profound. Men trained for war, accustomed to danger, were unsettled by phenomena that could not be engaged or fought. The unknown became a tangible threat, not through violence but through the fear it inspired, a fear compounded by isolation, fatigue, and the relentless monotony of the white expanse. Reports of hallucinations, vivid dreams, and unexplainable sensations were not uncommon. While some attributed these to stress or extreme conditions, others believed they were evidence of genuine encounters, interactions with forces deliberately concealed from human understanding. Amidst these phenomena, Byrd's leadership played a critical role. He emphasized observation and documentation above speculation, instructing pilots and crews to record every anomaly, no matter how improbable. His approach balanced rational military discipline with a cautious acknowledgement that they were confronting a world that might operate under different laws than their own. Diaries from officers note Byrd's quiet intensity, his uncanny ability to sense when a flight or operation required adjustment, and his insistence that anomalies were studied methodically, rather than dismissed as coincidence. This methodical approach would later allow researchers to piece together fragments of evidence, though the full truth remained elusive. Some of the encounters bordered on the fantastical. Pilots reported seeing disc-shaped objects rising from hidden valleys or glacial tunnels, accelerating beyond the limits of known technology, or hovering silently above ice cliffs as if studying the fleet. In one instance, a reconnaissance plane's instruments malfunctioned entirely as it approached a ridge where unusual lights were observed, forcing the pilot to retreat. Crew members on ships corroborated some of these sightings, reporting radar blips that appeared in tandem with visual phenomena. The convergence of multiple, independent accounts added credibility to what would otherwise be dismissed as hallucination or error. The notion that remnants of Nazi operations were involved was never far from mind. Some officers speculated that these craft or phenomena were experimental technologies hidden in Antarctic bases, perhaps advanced aircraft or remote-controlled drones operating under conditions the Allies had never encountered. Others considered less conventional possibilities: natural anomalies amplified by the environment, undiscovered energy sources, or even evidence of previously unknown civilizations beneath the ice. Whatever the explanation, the encounters reinforced a growing conviction among high-jump personnel that Antarctica was a landscape of mysteries, guarded by forces both seen and unseen. Even routine missions became charged with tension. Surveying ice plains, testing equipment, or conducting aerial photography was no longer mundane. Every flight and every ship movement was shadowed by the possibility of encountering something extraordinary. Men became hyper-aware, scanning horizons, monitoring instruments obsessively, and speculating on the implications of each anomaly. This heightened awareness, combined with the sheer scale and isolation of the continent, created an environment in which ordinary tasks assumed the weight of life-and-death significance. The cumulative effect of these encounters began to shape the operation itself. Decisions regarding flight paths, reconnaissance missions, and ice navigation were increasingly influenced by reports of strange phenomena. Byrd and his officers balanced the imperative of exploration with caution, aware that pushing too far into the unknown could result in catastrophe. At the same time, the allure of discovery, the possibility of uncovering remnants of hidden bases, advanced technology, or uncharted landscapes, drove the men forward, compelling them to confront dangers that no conventional war had ever demanded. As Operation Highjump continued, the encounters beyond the ice became more than isolated incidents. They were woven into the narrative of the mission itself. The men were witnessing a continent alive with mystery, where the ordinary laws of physics, technology, and human expectations seemed to bend. Antarctica was both theater and actor, shaping the operation, challenging the fleet, and hinting at secrets humanity had yet to comprehend. For the men who would return with tales of what they saw, the experiences were transformative, haunting memories that would fuel speculation, research, and the enduring enigma of the Antarctic frontier. By the time the first phase of the mission concluded, one undeniable truth had emerged. Antarctica was not a passive environment. It was an active participant in the events of Operation Highjump, a realm where the extraordinary and the inexplicable intersected with human ambition and courage. And for the men who had glimpsed what lay beyond the ice, the question lingered: how much of what they had seen was natural, how much was human-made, and how much remained deliberately hidden, waiting to challenge the next explorers who dared to venture into the southernmost reaches of the Earth. Among the most persistent whispers surrounding Operation Highjump was the existence of a lost base, an installation hidden somewhere beneath the ice, a place of mystery that had supposedly housed the remnants of Nazi operations or unknown technologies. For years, stories circulated among military personnel and intelligence circles alike, claiming that secret structures, tunnels, or even entire subterranean cities had been established in Antarctica, carefully concealed from the world. The very idea seemed fantastical, yet the men of Highjump were instructed to investigate, to document, and, if necessary, to confront whatever lay hidden in the frozen wasteland. As the fleet pressed further south, the search for such locations became more than an idle curiosity. Pilots flying reconnaissance missions over the continental interior occasionally reported anomalies that suggested deliberate construction. Lines in the ice that seemed unnaturally straight, depressions forming geometric patterns, and tunnels barely visible beneath the surface fueled speculation. Some photographic evidence captured shapes that, from certain angles, resembled buildings or hangars buried beneath layers of ice. For those aboard the ships, these hints transformed Antarctica from a landscape of desolation into a puzzle demanding solution. Stories from the men who ventured closest to potential sites paint a surreal picture. Survey teams reported hearing mechanical noises from deep within glacier. Low, rhythmic sounds that seemed to pulse in a pattern almost like life itself. Shadows moved across the ice plains in ways that defied wind or known atmospheric conditions. At night, strange lights flickered beneath the horizon, casting a glow that could not be attributed to natural auroras. While some dismissed these phenomena as tricks of light, ice, and imagination, others became convinced they were glimpses of something deliberately hidden, a presence that had survived the war and persisted in secrecy beneath the frozen surface. The strategic implications of a lost base were profound. If such a facility truly existed, it could harbor technology, supplies, or intelligence that would dramatically alter understanding of the final days of World War II. Some officers feared that remnants of advanced aircraft, weapons, or experimental devices could still be operational, posing unknown risks to those exploring the area. Others considered the possibility that these installations were decoys intended to mislead or test the Allies' resolve. The ambiguity only heightened the tension, creating a mission that was as much psychological as it was physical. Pilots frequently described the sense of entering an invisible labyrinth when approaching suspected sites. Aircraft instruments would sometimes malfunction, compasses spun unpredictably, and radio signals fluctuated without cause. On the ground, survey teams found themselves navigating treacherous crevasses, unstable ice formations, and sudden storms that seemed to appear from nowhere. In this environment, every step forward required courage, meticulous planning, and a constant awareness that the unknown could strike at any moment. The lost base, if it existed, was as much a mental construct as a physical location, a convergence of fear, curiosity, and the drive to uncover what had been deliberately concealed. Some accounts suggest that the lost base was not merely a Nazi installation, but something older, a location repurposed over centuries. There are speculative reports of structures carved into mountains, reinforced tunnels beneath glacier, and signs of engineering that predated modern Antarctic exploration. Could the continent have harbored hidden knowledge or civilizations unknown to the outside world? For the men of Highjump, such questions were both thrilling and terrifying, for the answer could redefine human understanding of history itself. The search for the base was fraught with danger. Expeditions over suspected areas often resulted in near disasters, planes forced to turn back due to engine failure, sled teams trapped by sudden crevasses, and ships pinned in ice for days. Equipment malfunctioned at critical moments, sometimes inexplicably, adding to the sense that the environment itself was conspiring against their efforts. Yet the allure of discovery, of glimpsing a secret that had been buried and protected, drove the men forward, compelling them to risk everything for a glimpse of what might lie beneath. Eyewitness reports of encounters near suspected base locations often bordered on the supernatural. Crews described objects rising from the ice, flying silently, and then disappearing into clouds. Pilots noted formations of ice that appeared deliberately carved, sometimes resembling the shapes of buildings or hangars from afar. Even the ship's crews observed radar anomalies that coincided with these sightings. Some suggested that these phenomena were evidence of advanced technology left behind by Nazi scientists. Others considered the possibility that the base was being guarded by forces humanity could not comprehend. For those witnessing such events firsthand, doubt and fear intertwined with awe, creating an atmosphere of tension that no training or preparation could fully alleviate. Admiral Byrd, aware of both the promise and peril, maintained a careful balance between exploration and caution. He instructed his teams to gather as much data as possible while avoiding unnecessary risk. Yet even Byrd could not control the mysteries of Antarctica, and he often remarked on the continent's capacity to confound expectations. To the men, the lost base became a symbol of the unknown, a goal that might never be fully realized, yet whose potential presence shaped every flight, every mission, and every decision. It was a constant reminder that in Antarctica, the line between myth and reality was thin, and that secrets could endure beneath ice for decades, or even centuries. The allure of the lost base persists even today. Was it truly a remnant of Nazi operations, abandoned and frozen in time? Could it have been something older, a structure predating human exploration entirely? Or was it a combination of human and natural factors, anomalies interpreted through the lens of fear, imagination, and extreme isolation? The answers remain elusive, hidden beneath ice layers that have withstood the elements for millennia. Yet for the men of Highjump, even the possibility of its existence was enough to transform Antarctica from a simple target of mapping and research into a theater of wonder, danger, and relentless curiosity. As the search continued, the lost base became a psychological presence as much as a physical objective. Its possible location shaped flight paths, reconnaissance priorities, and the very mindset of the men involved. Even without confirmation, it loomed in their minds, a silent antagonist challenging their skill, courage, and ability to confront the unknown. And as the fleet pushed deeper into the frozen continent, one reality became clear. Whether real or imagined, the lost base represented the ultimate confrontation between human ambition and the inscrutable, eternal forces of the Antarctic. Amid the endless ice and treacherous seas, something unseen began to make its presence known. Radar operators aboard the Highjump fleet reported anomalies, signals that appeared and disappeared without explanation, faint blips that seemed almost alive, and radio transmissions that defied conventional decoding. At first, the phenomena were dismissed as technical glitches or atmospheric interference, the expected quirks of operating equipment in extreme polar conditions. Yet as the fleet ventured further south, the anomalies grew more frequent, more structured, and impossible to ignore. Something, or someone, was reaching out from the depths of the Antarctic. Pilots flying over the icy expanse corroborated these signals with visual encounters. From the air, faint glows occasionally emerged on the horizon, sometimes hovering, sometimes darting with precision impossible for known aircraft. Radar screens would flicker in synchronization with these lights, suggesting a coordination that was deliberate. Even the most skeptical officers began to entertain a chilling possibility. The continent was not empty. Hidden beneath glacier, snow, and ice, forces of unknown origin might be operating, sending signals, monitoring the fleet, and perhaps even manipulating its movements. On-board ships, sonar operators also detected anomalies in the waters beneath the ice. Echoes returned in patterns that did not correspond to known topography or marine life. Sometimes these signals suggested structures, artificial forms, or moving objects beneath kilometers of ice. Some sonar readings even indicated large voids, spaces that could house entire facilities hidden from the world above. Crew members whispered that the Antarctic was not just a frozen desert, but a landscape of concealed depths, a place where the familiar laws of navigation and physics no longer guaranteed safety. The nature of these signals puzzled scientists as much as sailors. Radio frequencies fluctuated in ways that could not be replicated or explained by normal phenomena. Some transmissions contained pulses, patterns, and repetitions that hinted at intelligence. Others were accompanied by bursts of light, sudden electromagnetic disruptions, and even temporary instrument malfunctions. For the men observing these signals, the Antarctic ceased to be merely hostile. It became sentient, reactive, and capable of interacting with the fleet in ways that human understanding struggled to explain. Psychological strain among personnel intensified. Continuous exposure to unexplainable signals, erratic lights, and strange sounds weighed heavily on even the most experienced. Officers recorded instances of heightened anxiety, disorientation, and a growing sense of being watched. Pilots reported fleeting shadows crossing glacier, moving in perfect coordination with the signals detected below. Crew aboard ships spoke of equipment failing only in proximity to certain coordinates, as if the continent itself possessed zones of interference or control. Every anomaly reinforced a single, inescapable notion. Operation Highjump was not simply a survey. It was a confrontation with forces operating beyond the known parameters of human experience. Speculation about the origin of these signals quickly became widespread. Could they be remnants of Nazi operations, hidden underground bases transmitting data or monitoring intruders? Some officers considered the possibility of advanced, experimental technology, perhaps even aircraft capable of autonomous operation. Yet others pushed the boundaries of imagination further. Might these signals originate from a civilization long hidden beneath the ice, one whose technology and understanding surpassed humanity? Whatever the truth, the signals were real to those witnessing them, and they introduced an element of uncertainty, fear, and wonder into every mission. Pilots described experiences that were both awe-inspiring and terrifying. On one reconnaissance flight, a formation of lights appeared directly ahead, moving in synchrony with instruments picking up high-intensity signals. As the aircraft approached, the lights accelerated vertically, disappearing into a cloud layer, while radar blips faded in perfect unison. The encounter lasted mere minutes but left a lasting impression on the crew. Many described a sensation of being observed, not from the sky or land, but from an intelligence that seemed to anticipate their actions, reacting to them with uncanny precision. The fleet's command structure took the signals seriously, but the uncertainty created operational challenges. Flight plans had to account for areas of interference, and ships were rerouted to avoid regions where sonar or radar anomalies could interfere with navigation. Each adjustment carried the possibility of missing critical information or encountering new, unexplained phenomena. The Antarctic, it seemed, was rewriting the rules of the operation in real time, turning routine missions into exercises in vigilance, adaptation, and endurance. Even more unsettling were the reports of physical effects coinciding with the signals. Electronics sometimes malfunctioned entirely, compasses spun uncontrollably, and some crew members reported sudden dizziness or disorientation while near points of interference. Medical officers noted heightened stress and fatigue among personnel, attributing it partially to environmental conditions. Yet the correlation with signal locations was too consistent to ignore. It was as if the continent itself was influencing human physiology, creating subtle but undeniable pressure on the men operating within its bounds. These encounters sparked heated debate among officers and scientists. Some argued for skepticism, suggesting natural explanations such as auroras, ice reflections, or magnetic anomalies. Others, however, saw a pattern that pointed to intelligence. The signals were too precise, too coordinated, and too consistent to be mere coincidence. The possibility that the Antarctic was harboring technology, bases, or even unknown life forms became an increasingly serious consideration, compelling Byrd and his team to balance caution with curiosity, strategy with exploration, and observation with survival. The presence of the signals fundamentally changed the psychology of Operation Highjump. Men who had been trained for conventional combat or scientific exploration now confronted the unknown, the inexplicable, and the extraordinary. Each mission became a high-stakes encounter, when navigating ice, storms, and magnetic anomalies was only part of the challenge. The other part, understanding and reacting to these signals, introduced an element of uncertainty that could not be mitigated by experience or technology. It was as if the continent itself had become a living entity, testing the fleet, observing every maneuver, and withholding its deepest secrets. By the end of the first phase of these encounters, one truth had crystallized. Antarctica was not merely a landscape of ice and snow. It was a realm capable of interaction, surveillance, and influence over those who dared enter its expanse. The signals, whether from remnants of human activity, unknown technology, or something far stranger, became the defining feature of the mission's mysterious legacy. For the men of Highjump, witnessing these phenomena marked the point where exploration became a confrontation with the unknown, and where the Antarctic revealed itself as a theater of secrets, danger, and revelations waiting to be uncovered. As Operation Highjump pressed deeper into the southernmost reaches of the Earth, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The combination of extreme weather, treacherous terrain, and inexplicable phenomena created a sense that the fleet was no longer exploring but entering a realm that resisted intrusion. Reports from pilots and crew suggested that the Antarctic was reacting to their presence, shaping storms, interfering with instruments, and creating obstacles that tested both skill and nerve. Each day became a confrontation, not just with nature, but with forces that remained largely unseen. The pilots' experiences highlighted the relentless hostility of the environment. Katabatic winds, which could descend from ice-covered plateaus at hurricane speeds, tore at aircraft with little warning. Visibility vanished in seconds, leaving planes suspended between sky and ice, with only instruments to guide them, if instruments worked at all. Sudden magnetic anomalies caused compasses to spin wildly, and radar readings became erratic, sometimes indicating objects that were neither solid nor consistent with flight patterns. These challenges transformed reconnaissance into a life-and-death struggle, where one miscalculation could mean disaster. Ships also faced unprecedented danger. Icebreakers leading the fleet often found themselves trapped by shifting ice floes, their hulls creaking and groaning under immense pressure. Supply vessels struggled to navigate channels that seemed to change overnight, while destroyers were forced to reroute around unpredictable icebergs. Each maneuver was carefully calculated, yet the environment constantly reminded the crew of its unpredictability. The frozen continent had become an adversary with patience and precision, one that punished error and rewarded skillful adaptation. But the confrontation was not purely physical. Crew members reported a growing sense of unease, an intangible pressure that suggested they were being watched. Pilots described seeing objects moving in perfect synchronization with their aircraft, disappearing into clouds or vanishing behind glacier with impossible speed. Radar operators recorded blips that appeared and disappeared with alarming precision. Even on the ships, equipment sometimes failed only when approaching certain coordinates, leading many to suspect that the continent itself was orchestrating subtle tests of perception, coordination, and endurance. Some encounters hinted at intentional resistance. Pilots noted ice formations that seemed deliberately arranged to obstruct flight paths, while survey teams discovered patterns in the ice that suggested deliberate human construction, yet unlike anything previously documented. Shadows moved against wind patterns, lights appeared in geometric arrays, and faint mechanical noises echoed beneath glacier. Whether these phenomena were the result of advanced Nazi installations, unknown technologies, or natural anomalies remains unclear. But for the men of Highjump, the evidence was undeniable. The Antarctic was an environment capable of calculated opposition. The psychological weight of this frozen confrontation was immense. Men faced not only the extreme cold, fatigue, and isolation, but also the constant uncertainty of the unexplained. Some reported vivid hallucinations, hearing voices, or seeing shapes in the distance that disappeared upon approach. While extreme conditions may account for some experiences, the convergence of visual, auditory, and technological anomalies suggested something more deliberate. The continent, in its silence and immensity, seemed to be testing them, probing the limits of human endurance and courage. Admiral Byrd's leadership was crucial during these trials. He maintained rigorous discipline while acknowledging the extraordinary nature of the challenges faced. Byrd instructed crews to observe, document, and adapt, balancing caution with the imperative to explore. He emphasized the importance of maintaining morale, ensuring that fear did not override judgment, and that curiosity was tempered with survival. Diaries from officers recount Byrd's quiet authority, his calm in the face of seemingly impossible conditions, and his ability to convey that every anomaly, every obstacle, was part of a larger puzzle waiting to be understood. As the fleet pressed onward, encounters became increasingly intense. Reports of lights, radar anomalies, and mechanical interference grew more frequent. Pilots described objects that descended from hidden valleys, accelerated at impossible speeds, or hovered silently above glacier. Ships recorded unusual sonar readings that suggested large structures or voids beneath the ice. Some crew members even reported faint vibrations transmitted through the hulls of their vessels, as if something massive was moving beneath the frozen surface. The cumulative effect was undeniable. Antarctica had transformed from a passive environment into a participant in the mission, challenging every assumption and every skill the men possessed. The confrontation reached a pivotal moment when a reconnaissance flight encountered what appeared to be a hidden structure partially exposed by a shifting glacier. From the air, it resembled a hangar or tunnel entrance, with straight lines and geometric angles impossible to form naturally. Radar readings confirmed a solid mass beneath the ice, and lights inside seemed to flicker as if reacting to the approaching aircraft. The pilot's instruments faltered, and sudden winds forced a rapid retreat. Upon returning, the crew reported the encounter, sending shockwaves through the fleet. Speculation about a lost Nazi base, advanced technology, or even something more enigmatic intensified, leaving no doubt that the mission had crossed into territory few humans had ever witnessed. In the frozen confrontation, ordinary rules no longer applied. Instruments failed, paths shifted unpredictably, and the environment seemed almost sentient. Pilots, survey teams, and sailors had to rely on intuition, training, and courage to navigate a world where danger was invisible and anomalies could strike without warning. The Antarctic had become a theater of extremes, a place where human ambition collided with a force that could not be predicted, controlled, or easily explained. The confrontation was both physical and psychological, a test that would leave lasting impressions on all who endured it. Yet amidst the danger, there was a strange beauty. Glacier reflected sunlight in crystalline patterns, mountains rose like monuments to eternity, and the vast whiteness of the ice plains created a sense of sublime isolation. It was this duality, the extreme peril and haunting beauty, that defined the frozen confrontation. The men faced both or in terror simultaneously, recognizing that they were witnesses to a realm that defied ordinary comprehension. Every encounter, every anomaly, every shift in the ice reinforced a simple truth. Antarctica was alive with mystery, and those who entered its depths were forever changed. By the end of this phase of Operation Highjump, the frozen confrontation had established itself as the defining feature of the mission. The men had faced nature at its most extreme, encountered phenomena that defied explanation, and glimpsed secrets that challenged conventional understanding of history, technology, and geography. The continent had asserted itself not as a backdrop for exploration, but as an active participant in human affairs, testing courage, perception, and intellect in ways that would resonate for decades. For the men who returned, Antarctica remained a land of enigma, a frozen adversary that withheld its deepest secrets while leaving indelible marks on those who dared to confront it. Among the most haunting episodes of Operation Highjump was the sudden and unexplained disappearance of one of the reconnaissance aircraft. It was a routine flight, or so it seemed. The plane, carrying a seasoned pilot and a skilled navigator, had taken off in clear, but frigid, conditions, tasked with surveying a region of the Antarctic previously uncharted. Reports indicate that everything initially proceeded normally. Communications were steady, instruments functional, and the crew prepared for what they believed would be a standard mission in an extreme but familiar environment. However, as the aircraft progressed further south, conditions began to change in ways that defied prediction. Magnetic anomalies intensified, causing compasses and gyroscopic instruments to fluctuate erratically. Winds, previously manageable, shifted violently in patterns that seemed almost intelligent, forcing the pilot to make rapid adjustments. Onboard radio signals began to distort intermittently, creating static bursts interspersed with faint, unintelligible transmissions. Crew members aboard the fleet observed these distortions from a distance, sensing an anomaly but unable to discern its nature. Then, without warning, the aircraft vanished. Radar screens lost the blip entirely, and the plane's last transmissions contained fragmented, cryptic phrases that hinted at confusion and alarm. Pilots in nearby aircraft reported seeing fleeting lights in the sky, moving in unusual patterns, disappearing as quickly as they appeared. Ships attempting to triangulate positions detected nothing but ice, cloud cover, and the endless whiteness of the Antarctic plains. The disappearance was instantaneous, leaving the fleet with no explanation and the crew with a sense of profound vulnerability. Search and rescue operations were launched immediately. Ships and aircraft scoured the surrounding areas, navigating ice-filled waters and treacherous mountain passes. Teams combed the surface of glacier, probing for any sign of wreckage. But nothing was found, no debris, no traces of the plane, and no signs of survivors. The disappearance became a chilling enigma, reinforcing the notion that Antarctica was more than a passive, frozen landscape. It suggested that the continent, its storms, its ice formations, and perhaps even its hidden technologies, could intervene in ways that were invisible, unpredictable, and absolute. Eyewitness accounts from nearby pilots provided conflicting but equally unsettling details. Some claimed to have seen the plane approach a series of unusual lights that hovered above the ice, moving in a coordinated fashion. Others suggested that the aircraft had encountered an unnatural storm, unlike any meteorological phenomenon documented in the region. The intensity, directionality, and sudden onset of the storm seemed deliberate, almost as if the environment itself was responding to their intrusion. These reports, though fragmented, painted a picture of a confrontation not just with nature, but with forces operating beyond human comprehension. The psychological impact on the fleet was immediate. Confidence among the crews faltered, replaced by tension, fear, and heightened awareness of the unknown. Pilots became hypervigilant, scanning skies and ice for anomalies, while ship crews double-checked instruments and navigation equipment obsessively. The disappearance served as a stark reminder that in Antarctica, preparation, experience, and skill could only mitigate, not eliminate, danger. Every flight, every ice navigation, and every survey mission carried the shadow of that missing aircraft, a symbol of the unpredictability and mystery that defined the operation. Speculation about the cause of the disappearance ran rampant. Some officers maintained that the plane had simply succumbed to the extreme conditions, wind shear, hidden crevasses, or equipment failure. Others believed more extraordinary explanations were possible, that the aircraft had been intercepted by unknown craft, drawn into a hidden base, or even pulled into phenomena that defied natural laws. Rumors began to circulate about interactions with hidden technologies, remnants of Nazi operations, or even unknown life forms beneath the ice. For those on the ground and in the air, the absence of evidence only heightened the terror and fascination. The incident also raised questions about the hidden landscapes of Antarctica. Could the continent conceal tunnels, hangars, or facilities so well hidden that even modern reconnaissance could not detect them? Some accounts suggested that shifting ice and snow had obscured entrances, creating natural camouflage that no ordinary observation could penetrate. Others proposed that advanced electromagnetic interference, potentially generated by hidden devices or energy sources, had rendered the plane invisible to radar and instruments. Whatever the explanation, the disappearance emphasized that the frozen continent was both hostile and enigmatic, a place where human perception and technology could be rendered irrelevant in an instant. Admiral Byrd himself took the event seriously. His reports indicate a mixture of concern, caution, and determination to understand what had occurred. He increased reconnaissance efforts in the region, implemented stricter protocols for aircraft, and emphasized the importance of observation and documentation. Yet even Byrd acknowledged the limits of human comprehension in the Antarctic. In private notes, he expressed unease that the continent might conceal secrets deliberately, with mechanisms or forces beyond human control, capable of eliminating intruders without leaving a trace. His words convey both the gravity of the mission and the psychological weight imposed by the disappearance. The mystery of the missing aircraft became a defining moment in the narrative of Operation Highjump. It was not merely a tragic loss of life. It was a symbol of the unknown, the unpredictable, and the potentially supernatural aspects of the Antarctic environment. For decades, speculation about the incident has fueled discussions, books, and documentaries, contributing to the mythos of hidden bases, advanced technologies, and the strange phenomena reported throughout the mission. The event blurred the line between documented history and legend, leaving a legacy that continues to fascinate and unsettle those who study the operation. Even today, The disappearance prompts questions that remain unanswered. Was the aircraft lost to a natural accident amplified by extreme environmental conditions? Was it intercepted by a hidden force, human or otherwise? Or did it encounter phenomena so advanced or alien that the crew never had a chance to communicate their fate? For those who delve into the story of Operation Highjump, the incident serves as a chilling reminder that the Antarctic, despite its beauty and isolation, is a realm of active mystery, a place where humans may glimpse extraordinary secrets but never fully grasp them. The loss also had profound emotional consequences. Families of the missing crew endured uncertainty, while fellow servicemen were forced to reconcile the bravery and sacrifice of their comrades with the inexplicable circumstances of their disappearance. Within the fleet, a sense of shared vulnerability permeated every operation. Men became more cautious, more observant, and more aware that in Antarctica, survival was never guaranteed, and every anomaly could carry consequences beyond imagination. The continent had claimed its first dramatic narrative of fear, awe, and the unknown, setting the tone for the remainder of the expedition. Ultimately, the disappearance of the aircraft reinforced a simple yet terrifying reality. Antarctica was not a passive backdrop for exploration. It was a realm of extreme peril, capable of extraordinary phenomena, and potentially home to secrets that had been deliberately hidden or naturally concealed for millennia. The event marked the point at which curiosity intersected with danger, where human courage was tested against forces beyond comprehension, and where the line between history, speculation, and legend began to blur. For Operation Highjump, the missing aircraft became more than a loss. It became a symbol, a warning, and a haunting reminder that the frozen continent held mysteries still waiting to be uncovered. In the frozen theater of Operation Highjump, survival depended not only on courage and skill, but also on the advanced equipment supplied to the fleet. Yet even among this cutting-edge technology, there were items so secretive, so unconventional, that only select officers and pilots were authorized to use or even understand them. These tools were not merely instruments of navigation or survival. They were a means of confronting the unknown, designed to give the men a fighting chance against the unpredictable and mysterious Antarctic environment. The fleet carried specialized aircraft equipped with reinforced hulls, de-icing systems, and advanced radar capable of penetrating ice and storm clouds. But alongside these conventional tools were devices that seemed almost experimental. Some aircraft were fitted with enhanced electromagnetic sensors, designed to detect unusual energy sources beneath glacier. Others carried cameras with infrared capabilities to reveal heat signatures invisible to the naked eye. These instruments were considered cutting-edge, but in the context of Antarctica, they became windows into phenomena that defied explanation. Pilots often reported seeing signals, lights, or shapes that conventional equipment could not detect, but which the experimental devices revealed, sometimes fleetingly, sometimes with startling clarity. On the ground, survey teams relied on specialized navigation equipment capable of functioning under extreme magnetic interference. Compasses, gyroscopes, and altimeters were reinforced and often paired with redundancy systems to ensure accuracy in a region where traditional instruments could fail unpredictably. Sleds were fitted with communication relays, and shelters included emergency power sources designed to withstand storms that could last for days. Every piece of equipment was meticulously maintained, yet men quickly learned that even the most advanced technology could be rendered ineffective by the continent's unique conditions. The Antarctic environment had a way of testing not just human endurance but the limits of machinery itself. Some of the most enigmatic equipment was shrouded in secrecy even among the fleet. Certain devices were clearly experimental. Small, handheld units emitting low-frequency signals, or compact radar extensions that seemed capable of mapping not only the surface but structures beneath the ice. Only select officers understood their operation, and even fewer were permitted to interpret the data. Photographs and readings captured by these devices often contained anomalies, structures buried under layers of ice, moving shapes inconsistent with known aircraft, or energy signatures that appeared to defy natural explanation. The existence of such equipment suggested that the planners of Operation Highjump anticipated encountering phenomena that were not only extraordinary but potentially hostile. The secret equipment also played a psychological role. Knowing that some tools could detect anomalies invisible to the naked eye introduced both reassurance and anxiety. Pilots and crew relied on these instruments to navigate uncertain skies, yet every new reading carried the possibility of revealing something previously unknown, something that could challenge understanding or threaten safety. This duality, a blend of empowerment and foreboding, heightened the tension of every mission, turning ordinary reconnaissance into a confrontation with the enigmatic forces of the continent. In several documented instances, secret equipment captured inexplicable phenomena. Cameras recorded lights moving beneath ice ridges. Radar systems detected large voids that suggested subterranean structures, and sensors picked up unusual electromagnetic pulses in areas where no human or natural activity should exist. Some readings were dismissed as malfunctions, yet repeated observations across multiple instruments and independent crews lent credibility to the idea that Antarctica concealed extraordinary elements, objects, bases, or energies deliberately hidden and carefully shielded from conventional detection. One particularly intriguing aspect involved devices capable of detecting anomalies in energy fields. Some pilots reported that the instruments would fluctuate violently near specific locations, even when all other environmental factors appeared normal. Observers speculated that these readings indicated hidden installations, advanced machinery, or perhaps natural phenomena operating on principles not yet understood. The fluctuations often coincided with visual reports of lights, shadows, or strange formations, suggesting that the equipment was not merely measuring random occurrences but interacting with forces that had intelligence or purpose. The secret equipment also revealed the limitations of human perception. Pilots, surveyors, and radar operators often experienced moments when their eyes or instruments disagreed. Shadows moved where none should exist, lights flickered inconsistently, and sensors occasionally picked up signals that disappeared as quickly as they arrived. These experiences challenged conventional understanding, compelling the men to rely on their experimental devices to record evidence that might otherwise have been dismissed as illusion. In a landscape where visual perception could deceive and instruments could fail, the secret equipment became an extension of human senses, revealing the extraordinary beneath the ordinary. Despite the advanced technology, the environment often asserted dominance. Instruments would fail at critical moments, communications would become garbled, and navigation would be rendered nearly impossible. Some pilots described a sensation of being watched when equipment behaved erratically, as if the continent itself, or something beneath its surface, responded to human intrusion. These experiences were unsettling, yet they reinforced the importance of the secret equipment. Without it, the fleet would have been blind, navigating only by instinct in a land where instinct alone could not ensure survival. The very secrecy surrounding the equipment added to the tension. Officers were aware that some devices were experimental, but details were tightly controlled. This meant that when anomalies appeared, crews often lacked full understanding of what their instruments were detecting. Did the readings indicate natural formations, remnants of human activity, or something entirely unknown? The uncertainty fueled both curiosity and fear, creating an atmosphere where every new observation was a potential breakthrough or a warning. Ultimately, the secret equipment of Operation Highjump was more than just tools. It was a bridge between human capability and the mysteries of Antarctica. It allowed men to confront phenomena that would otherwise have remained invisible, to navigate ice and storm with greater confidence, and to document encounters that continue to intrigue researchers and conspiracy theorists alike. At the same time, it highlighted the profound uncertainty of the continent, reminding everyone that no matter how advanced technology became, Antarctica remained a realm of enigma, danger, and revelation. By the conclusion of this phase of the mission, it was clear that the secret equipment had fulfilled its purpose. It captured glimpses of phenomena that challenged conventional understanding, provided critical data for navigation and survival, and ensured that even in the face of the unknown, humanity had a means, however limited, to observe, record, and engage with the extraordinary. Yet the instruments also underscored a sobering truth. The Antarctic did not reveal its secrets willingly. and even the most sophisticated technology could only provide fragments of understanding. The frozen continent, with its hidden structures, mysterious signals, and inexplicable anomalies, remained an arena where human curiosity, courage, and ingenuity were tested against forces beyond comprehension. Among the most revealing elements of Operation Highjump were the secret flight logs, detailed records of reconnaissance missions, aerial observations, and the unusual phenomena encountered over the Antarctic expanse. These logs were not merely operational reports. They were chronicles of encounters that defied explanation, documenting lights, shadows, radar anomalies, and incidents that challenged the very limits of human understanding. Access to these logs was restricted, shared only with select officers and intelligence personnel, yet their contents painted a picture of a mission far more extraordinary than the official narrative suggested. From the very first flights into uncharted territory, the logs recorded anomalies that confounded pilots and radar operators alike. One entry described a series of lights moving in geometric patterns over a glacier, disappearing and reappearing at impossible speeds. The pilot, a veteran with hundreds of flight hours, noted in his log that no known aircraft could perform such maneuvers. Radar operators corroborated the sighting, recording blips that flickered in perfect synchronization with the lights, disappearing when the aircraft attempted to approach. Such entries were frequent, suggesting that encounters with the inexplicable were not isolated but recurring events, carefully observed and meticulously documented. The logs also contained accounts of the missing aircraft from Section 13. Detailed timestamps revealed the plane's final positions, instrument readings, and cryptic radio transmissions. Analysts noted irregular electromagnetic readings coinciding with the aircraft's last known coordinates, indicating a possible interaction with hidden phenomena beneath the ice. While some dismissed these as coincidences or environmental interference, the consistency and specificity of the data suggested otherwise. For those with access to the logs, the entries provided tantalizing evidence that Antarctica held secrets deliberately concealed from human detection, and that the missing aircraft had encountered forces beyond conventional understanding. One of the most striking aspects of the flight logs was the recurring pattern of anomalies in specific locations. Pilots repeatedly reported encountering lights, radar blips, and energy fluctuations along certain flight paths. These locations often corresponded with regions where earlier missions had recorded unusual geological formations, electromagnetic disturbances, or strange acoustic signals. The logs implied that the continent was not a uniform expanse of ice but a complex landscape containing zones of heightened activity, areas that seemed to respond to the fleet's presence or reveal themselves only under certain conditions. Entries also described phenomena that were difficult to quantify or categorize. Pilots reported seeing structures partially exposed by shifting glacier, shapes resembling hangars or tunnels, and shadows moving independently of natural light. Some logs included sketches and diagrams of formations that did not match any known geological features. At times, readings from specialized instruments, such as electromagnetic detectors and infrared cameras, correlated with visual observations, creating a compelling case that these encounters were real and not mere hallucinations. For those reviewing the logs, the challenge was interpreting what these phenomena represented: remnants of human activity, undiscovered natural formations, or something entirely alien. The psychological impact of these encounters, as reflected in the logs, was also significant. Repeated exposure to anomalies, extreme environmental conditions, and the ever-present sense of being observed affected the crew's mental state. Logs frequently mention heightened vigilance, fear, and disorientation, yet they also reveal a profound fascination with the unknown. Pilots and crew oscillated between awe and terror, documenting each encounter with a mixture of scientific rigor and personal reflection. The logs, in this sense, provided dual narrative, one of operational detail and one of human experience, capturing the psychological stakes of confronting the inexplicable. The logs further highlight the role of Admiral Byrd in maintaining discipline and focus during the mission. Byrd's notes and annotations emphasize careful observation, precise documentation, and adherence to protocol, even when confronted with extraordinary phenomena. He instructed pilots to record every anomaly, no matter how fleeting or confusing, and to cross-reference observations with radar, sonar, and other instrument readings. This meticulous approach ensured that the flight logs were more than anecdotal. They became verifiable records, creating a foundation for understanding encounters that otherwise might have been dismissed or lost to history. Some entries contained descriptions of interactions with unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. Pilots recounted lights that approached their aircraft, paused, and then mirrored maneuvers in a way that suggested intelligence or intent. Radar readings often coincided with these visual encounters, capturing blips that defied conventional flight paths. In several instances, the logs note that these objects moved with a precision and speed unmatched by human-made aircraft. Analysts who later studied the logs concluded that these encounters were among the earliest recorded instances of UAPs in Antarctica, predating many publicized sightings by decades. The secrecy surrounding the flight logs added an additional layer of intrigue. Their existence was classified, with access restricted to high-level military personnel and intelligence agencies. As a result, the information contained within remained largely unknown to the public, fueling speculation, conspiracy theories, and continued research long after Operation Highjump concluded. Historians and investigators who later gained access to fragments of the logs were struck by the level of detail, the consistency of observations, and the recurring nature of anomalies, evidence that suggested a deliberate attempt to document the unknown, even as the mission itself remained publicly framed as a simple Antarctic expedition. The cumulative weight of the flight logs also shaped the mission strategy. Pilots and officers adjusted flight paths, reconnaissance priorities, and observation techniques based on previous entries. Areas of repeated anomaly became high-priority zones for investigation, while locations of extreme danger or instrument interference were approached with caution. The logs were not merely records. They were operational tools, guiding human interaction with a landscape that refused to be fully understood. Ultimately, the secret flight logs reveal that Operation Highjump was more than a military expedition. It was an encounter with the unknown. They document the fleet's confrontation with extraordinary phenomena, the psychological and operational challenges faced by personnel, and the intricate relationship between human technology and the Antarctic environment. For those who study the logs, they offer a rare window into a mission that pushed the limits of exploration, endurance, and understanding, capturing the essence of one of history's most enigmatic and compelling expeditions. By preserving meticulous records of each encounter, the flight logs ensured that the mysteries of Antarctica were not lost to time. They allowed future generations to analyze, speculate, and imagine what lay beneath the ice. Most importantly, they confirmed a central truth. Antarctica was a continent of hidden dangers, unexplained phenomena, and secrets that even the most advanced human technology could only partially reveal. In the frozen expanse, the flight logs became a bridge between human curiosity and the inscrutable forces of nature, ensuring that the extraordinary events of Operation Highjump would continue to intrigue, unsettle, and inspire for decades to come. Beneath the relentless whiteness of Antarctica, whispers circulated among the men of Operation Highjump about tunnels, hidden passageways burrowed deep into the ice, possibly extending for miles, and completely invisible to conventional reconnaissance. At first, such rumors were dismissed as exaggeration or the product of fatigue, isolation, and stress. Yet as the fleet pressed further south, multiple indications suggested that these subterranean tunnels were not only real but potentially significant, serving purposes that went far beyond mere exploration or scientific study. Evidence of these tunnels emerged gradually. Survey teams recorded depressions in the ice, linear formations that could not be explained by natural glacier movements, and subtle variations in temperature readings that hinted at voids beneath the surface. Aircraft equipped with infrared and electromagnetic sensors detected anomalies that suggested enclosed spaces, corridors, or chambers hidden under kilometers of ice. These readings were confirmed by multiple independent instruments, making it increasingly difficult to dismiss the phenomenon as coincidence. Something, or someone, had shaped the Antarctic landscape from beneath, leaving signs that were subtle but detectable to those with the proper tools. Accounts from pilots further fueled the mystery. On several occasions, aircraft flying over suspected regions reported observing shadows and movements beneath the ice that aligned with the anomalies recorded on instruments. Lights occasionally flickered from beneath the snow, disappearing before the aircraft could approach. Some pilots described feeling an almost palpable sense of presence, as if the tunnels were occupied, monitored, or even guarded. While no definitive confirmation of life was recorded, the combination of visual, instrumental, and psychological evidence suggested that these tunnels were not ordinary geological formations. They were deliberate constructs, designed to remain hidden yet leave traces detectable to those searching carefully. Speculation about the origin of these tunnels was intense. Some suggested that they were remnants of Nazi Antarctic operations, abandoned yet structurally intact, possibly serving as storage facilities, research labs, or even experimental hangars. Others proposed that they predated modern human activity entirely, representing an ancient, unknown civilization whose knowledge and technology had been concealed beneath the ice for millennia. Diaries and reports indicate that officers were divided, with some emphasizing military logic and history, while others entertained more extraordinary possibilities. The uncertainty amplified tension within the fleet, as men weighed the risks of exploration against the tantalizing prospect of uncovering unprecedented secrets. The tunnels also introduced operational challenges. Navigation over suspected areas became treacherous, as surface ice often concealed treacherous crevasses and hidden voids. Pilots had to rely heavily on experimental instruments, while ground teams approached with extreme caution, probing with stakes, measuring temperatures, and scanning for electromagnetic anomalies. Every step carried risk. A miscalculation could lead to a catastrophic fall into an unseen shaft, or equipment failure could leave crews stranded on ice that might collapse beneath them. The Antarctic, once thought of as a passive environment, had transformed into an active labyrinth, testing ingenuity, courage, and survival skills at every turn. Several documented encounters with the tunnels heightened their mystique. On one mission, an aircraft equipped with advanced radar flew over a suspected location and captured readings indicating a series of connected chambers beneath the glacier. Simultaneously, infrared sensors detected heat signatures that suggested recent activity, though no human presence was confirmed. Pilots reported seeing faint lights through cracks in the ice, briefly illuminating geometric structures below. These experiences were corroborated by radar operators aboard ships, whose instruments reflected coordinated anomalies in the same areas. Together, these accounts suggested that the tunnels were not only real but operational, or at least preserved in a manner that made them detectable long after their construction. Psychologically, the tunnels had a profound impact on crews. Men operating in regions of suspected subterranean activity reported heightened anxiety, an acute awareness of observation, and a strange, almost hypnotic curiosity. Some described hearing faint mechanical noises or feeling vibrations transmitted through the ice, sensations that could not be traced to natural causes. These experiences reinforced the belief that the tunnels were more than geological oddities. They were active participants in the Antarctic enigma, designed to interact with or at least respond to human presence. Fear and fascination intertwined, creating an environment where each mission became a test of both skill and nerve. The strategic implications of discovering such tunnels were staggering. If they were not built, they might contain advanced technology, experimental aircraft, or even records of secret research programs. If they were ancient, they could hold knowledge or artifacts entirely unknown to modern science. Either scenario carried profound significance, transforming the Antarctic from a remote wilderness into a theater of historical and technological discovery. Officers and scientists alike realized that uncovering these tunnels could rewrite understandings of human history, military history, and the potential of previously undiscovered technologies. Yet the tunnels also presented ethical and procedural dilemmas. Should the fleet attempt to penetrate them fully, risking lives and equipment, or merely observe from a safe distance? How much information should be recorded, and how should it be interpreted without direct verification? Admiral Byrd's notes emphasize caution, recommending meticulous documentation and indirect observation while recognizing the allure and danger of direct exploration. The logs reflect a balance between ambition and prudence, highlighting the tension inherent in a mission that navigated both physical and conceptual frontiers. Even today, the existence of these tunnels continues to provoke debate and speculation. Some researchers argue that natural ice formations could account for the anomalies, while others maintain that multiple independent observations, corroborated by advanced instruments, indicate deliberate construction. The combination of radar, infrared, electromagnetic readings, and pilot testimony creates a compelling case that Antarctica harbors subterranean structures whose full extent remains unknown. For those who study Operation Highjump, the tunnels are among the most tantalizing and enduring mysteries, a symbol of the continent's hidden depths and its capacity to challenge human understanding. Ultimately, the hidden subterranean tunnels represent the intersection of mystery, danger, and discovery. They are not merely passages beneath the ice but gateways into the unknown, reminding those who explore that the Antarctic is an environment of profound enigma. For the men of Highjump, the tunnels embodied the essence of the mission, a confrontation with extremes, a test of courage, and a glimpse into secrets deliberately concealed from humanity. The Antarctic, in its frozen silence, had revealed yet another layer of its inscrutable complexity, leaving the fleet with questions that would echo long after the expedition concluded. As the fleet pressed further into the Antarctic expanse, reports began to emerge of encounters with aircraft unlike any the men had seen before. These unknown craft moved with a precision, speed, and silence that defied conventional aviation technology. Pilots initially dismissed the sightings as illusions, reflections off the ice, or misinterpretations of weather phenomena. Yet the consistency of these observations, coupled with radar confirmations and corroborating crew testimonies, left little doubt. The fleet was witnessing something extraordinary. The first encounter occurred during a reconnaissance mission over a remote stretch of glacier. A pilot recorded seeing a disc-shaped object hovering silently above the ice, reflecting sunlight in a way that made it appear almost translucent. Radar blips aligned with a visual observation, though they fluctuated in ways that suggested the object was capable of sudden acceleration or abrupt directional changes. Attempts to approach the craft were thwarted by sudden gusts of wind and instrument malfunctions. The pilot's log noted the eeriness of the moment. It did not behave like anything man has built. It observed us as much as we observed it. Subsequent encounters intensified the mystery. Over several missions, multiple pilots reported craft that appeared in formation, moving in precise, coordinated patterns. Unlike conventional aircraft, these unknown objects could hover indefinitely, accelerate to incredible speeds in moments, and maneuver with fluidity that defied physics as understood at the time. Radar operators aboard ships corroborated these sightings, recording blips that vanished when planes attempted to close the distance, only to reappear miles away seconds later. These patterns suggested intelligence or advanced technology, reinforcing the sense that Antarctica was a theater for phenomena far beyond human control. The encounters were not limited to visual or radar sightings. Pilots reported unusual electromagnetic interference in the vicinity of these craft. Instruments fluctuated, compasses spun unpredictably, and radio communications became garbled or entirely silent. In some cases, multiple sensors simultaneously recorded energy spikes or anomalies that could not be attributed to natural phenomena. Crew members described a palpable tension in the air, a sense that the unknown craft could influence their surroundings without direct contact. These experiences heightened fear and fascination in equal measure, creating an atmosphere where every flight became an exercise in vigilance and survival. One particularly striking report involved a squadron of aircraft approaching what appeared to be a large ice cavern suspected to conceal subterranean structures. The unknown craft appeared suddenly, hovering over the entrance. It emitted a low-frequency hum, accompanied by subtle vibrations felt through the fuselage of the planes. Pilots noted that the craft seemed aware of their movements, responding with maneuvers that mirrored the squadron's formation. Despite efforts to communicate or engage, the craft maintained a silent, observant presence before vanishing into the Antarctic sky. This incident became a focal point for speculation, suggesting that the craft were either monitoring or protecting areas of strategic or hidden importance. The psychological impact of these encounters cannot be overstated. Men trained for combat or scientific observation were forced to confront phenomena that did not adhere to known physical laws or engineering principles. Anxiety, awe, and curiosity became intertwined, affecting morale and decision-making. Logs indicate heightened vigilance, meticulous documentation, and, in some cases, reluctance to fly in certain regions. Pilots described a surreal sensation, that the craft were not merely present but possessed awareness, capable of observing and interacting with human operations in ways that defied comprehension. The fleet's intelligence officers began to theorize about the origins of these unknown craft. Some argued for the possibility of advanced Nazi technology hidden in Antarctic facilities, perhaps developed during the final years of World War II and concealed beneath the ice. Others speculated that these objects could be the product of entirely unknown civilizations or extraterrestrial presence, operating independently of human understanding. While evidence remained circumstantial, the repeated encounters, documented across multiple instruments and witnessed by multiple observers, made the phenomenon difficult to dismiss as coincidence or error. Detailed flight logs recorded patterns in the behavior of the craft. Observations suggested that they were capable of not only rapid acceleration, but also evasive maneuvers synchronized with the movements of the Highjump fleet. Pilots noted that when approached directly, the objects often vanished or retreated, yet reappeared in positions that implied anticipation or predictive calculation. Such behavior indicated intelligence, strategy, or at least a sophisticated automated system. Radar operators confirmed that the object's readings did not match known aircraft or meteorological patterns, reinforcing the sense that the fleet was witnessing technology or phenomena beyond contemporary human capability. Witness accounts also described the craft interacting with environmental elements in unusual ways. Snow and ice appeared to shift or glow subtly in the proximity of these objects. Pilots reported localized magnetic disturbances and electromagnetic pulses that interfered with navigation equipment. Occasionally, the unknown craft would appear near anomalies such as the hidden tunnels or suspected subterranean installations, suggesting a possible connection between these features and the enigmatic aerial objects. Such correlations fueled intense speculation that Antarctica was not merely a backdrop for exploration, but a landscape of active, monitored, and protected zones. Despite the advanced technology and training of the Highjump fleet, these encounters exposed human limitations. Instruments failed, visual perception proved unreliable under extreme conditions, and the craft's behavior remained unpredictable. Yet the fleet persisted, driven by curiosity, duty, and the imperative to document the extraordinary. The encounters reinforced a critical lesson. Antarctica was not a passive environment. It was an active theater where unknown forces, whether technological, natural, or intelligent, could and did assert influence over human operations. The legacy of these encounters extends beyond the immediate mission. Reports, flight logs, and declassified records provide a rare glimpse into early 20th century observations of unidentified aerial phenomena in Antarctica, predating many publicly known sightings. The consistency, detail, and corroboration of these accounts make them significant not only for historical study, but also for understanding the potential intersection of human exploration and extraordinary phenomena. For the men of Operation Highjump, these encounters became defining moments, shaping perceptions of the Antarctic as a landscape of danger, enigma, and unprecedented discovery. Ultimately, the encounters with unknown craft underscore the extraordinary nature of Operation Highjump. They reveal a world where conventional understanding is challenged, where human ingenuity is tested against forces beyond comprehension, and where the frozen continent serves as both stage and participant in a drama of mystery, tension, and revelation. For those who study these events, the unknown craft remains symbols of the hidden, the unexplained, and the enduring intrigue that surrounds the Antarctic, ensuring that the expedition's legacy continues to inspire curiosity, awe, and speculation to this day. As Operation Highjump delved deeper into the Antarctic interior, the fleet encountered what would become one of the most shocking discoveries of the entire mission. Evidence of a massive structure buried within the ice, an ice fortress unlike anything previously documented. From the air, it appeared as a series of perfectly geometric formations partially exposed by shifting glacier. Its angles and dimensions seemed unnatural, defying the organic chaos of surrounding ice. The revelation stunned the crews, challenging not only their understanding of history, but also their comprehension of what human or non-human forces could construct in such an inhospitable environment. The initial sighting came from a reconnaissance pilot surveying an area marked by unusual radar anomalies. As the aircraft descended for closer observation, infrared sensors detected heat signatures consistent with enclosed spaces, suggesting that the fortress was not merely frozen ice but contained chambers, corridors, and perhaps even operational areas. Light reflected off the surface in ways that indicated metal or other materials beneath the ice, further deepening the mystery. The pilot's log captures a mixture of awe and apprehension. It is enormous. Lines and angles that should not exist in nature. Something, or someone, has shaped this ice deliberately. Radar and electromagnetic readings corroborated the visual evidence. The fortress registered as a solid mass beneath the glacier, with structural elements suggesting multiple levels or sections. The readings were inconsistent with natural formations, and instruments detected unusual energy emissions, low-frequency pulses that seemed to emanate from within the structure itself. While no active movement was confirmed, the combination of geometry, material composition, and energy signatures implied intentional construction, raising urgent questions about its origin, purpose, and creators. Speculation among the fleet ran rampant. Some officers theorized that the ice fortress could be a remnant of secret Nazi operations, constructed as a hidden base in the final years of World War II. Others posited more extraordinary explanations: an ancient civilization buried beneath the ice, extraterrestrial architecture, or advanced technology deliberately concealed from humanity. Diaries indicate that even seasoned officers were shaken by the discovery, struggling to reconcile conventional military understanding with phenomena that seemed to belong to science fiction. The fortress transformed the Antarctic from a remote wilderness into a stage for profound historical and technological mystery. The psychological impact on the crew was immediate. Pilots, scientists, and sailors reported heightened tension, awe, and fear. Some described a visceral sense that the fortress was more than an inert structure, that it possessed a presence or intelligence of its own. When aircraft approached the site, instruments fluctuated unpredictably, compasses spun, and radio communications experienced interference. Some pilots reported seeing faint lights inside the structure, fleeting shapes that disappeared before identification, and subtle vibrations transmitted through the ice. These phenomena reinforced the idea that the fortress was not merely a relic but an active or at least reactive presence within the Antarctic landscape. Efforts to document the ice fortress were meticulous. High-resolution cameras, infrared imaging, and radar mapping were deployed to capture its dimensions, orientation, and possible entrances. Flight logs and sensor data were carefully cross-referenced, ensuring that each anomaly was recorded and verified. Officers emphasized caution. The structure, while enticing, was potentially dangerous, both physically and technologically. Glacier and ice formations surrounding the fortress were unstable, and the possibility of traps, mechanical hazards, or hidden forces could not be discounted. The fleet approached with both curiosity and extreme caution, aware that a single misstep could have catastrophic consequences. Several encounters provided tantalizing glimpses into the fortress's interior. Pilots reported observing what appeared to be tunnels or corridors extending into the ice, with consistent patterns suggesting intentional design. Infrared sensors revealed temperature differentials indicating enclosed spaces or machinery. Occasionally, light reflections suggested metallic surfaces or objects inside chambers. While no personnel or life forms were definitively observed, the implication of human or non-human activity was undeniable. For those aboard the fleet, These fleeting glimpses were enough to confirm that Antarctica held secrets far beyond conventional expectations. The discovery of the ice fortress also intersected with reports of unknown craft, previously documented in Section 17. Observations indicated that the craft often appeared near the fortress, hovering above or around suspected entrances. Pilots noted that these objects seemed to react to human proximity, retreating or adjusting position in a manner suggesting awareness or surveillance. Radar readings captured similar patterns, with energy emissions fluctuating in ways that implied monitoring or defensive capabilities. These correlations fueled speculation that the fortress was not abandoned but under some form of active oversight, raising urgent questions about its purpose and origin. Strategically, the ice fortress became the focal point of Operation Highjump's mission. Survey priorities were adjusted, reconnaissance flights were redirected, and observation teams devoted significant attention to documenting the site. Officers recognized that the discovery represented not only a historical anomaly but a potential military or scientific revelation of extraordinary magnitude. The fortress's existence suggested capabilities, knowledge, or infrastructure previously unimagined, possibilities that could reshape understandings of history, warfare, and technology. Psychological effects continued to ripple through the fleet. Crew members reported increased vigilance, heightened awareness of anomalies, and a pervasive sense of awe. Many noted that the fortress seemed to project a presence, subtle but undeniable, that affected perception, instruments, and morale. Some pilots described a feeling of being observed, a sense that their every movement was anticipated or recorded. This psychological dimension added a layer of complexity to the mission, as human endurance, intuition, and courage were tested alongside technological capability and observational skill. Even decades later, the ice fortress remains one of the most compelling enigmas of Operation Highjump. While fragments of data, photographs, and sensor readings exist, full verification of the structure has never been publicly confirmed. Researchers continue to debate its origin, purpose, and significance, drawing upon flight logs, eyewitness accounts, and declassified military documents. The fortress symbolizes the intersection of history, mystery, and human ambition, a reminder that Antarctica is not merely a frozen wilderness but a repository of secrets, some ancient, some modern, and some possibly beyond human comprehension. Ultimately, the ice fortress revelation marked a turning point in Operation Highjump. It crystallized the mission's transition from exploration to encounter, from observation to confrontation with the extraordinary. The discovery underscored the limits of human knowledge, the challenges of extreme environments, and the potential presence of forces or intelligence deliberately hidden from the world. For the men of the fleet, it was a moment of awe, fear, and profound curiosity, a tangible reminder that beneath the ice, the continent had stories to tell that could alter perceptions of history, technology, and human capability. The ice fortress stands as a symbol of Antarctica's enduring mystery. Its discovery, meticulously documented yet largely concealed from the public eye, challenges the conventional narrative of exploration and underscores the continent's role as a theater for extraordinary events. It reminds us that the world, even in the modern age, still holds places where the unknown can surprise, challenge, and transform human understanding. For Operation Highjump, the ice fortress was not merely a structure but a revelation, one that continues to haunt imaginations and inspire inquiry, ensuring that the secrets of the frozen continent remain as compelling and elusive today as they were in 1946. Amidst the icy expanse of Antarctica, Operation Highjump carried out experiments that have remained shrouded in secrecy for decades, tests of advanced and unconventional weapons. While the official narrative emphasized training, survival, and reconnaissance, several classified logs and eyewitness accounts hint at something far more extraordinary, trialing technology that defied conventional military understanding. The frozen continent, isolated and extreme, provided a controlled environment where experiments could proceed without outside interference, but at a cost, risk, secrecy, and encounters with phenomena that no one fully understood. Some of the weapons tested were modifications of conventional arms, adapted for extreme cold and high-altitude conditions. Artillery pieces were fitted with reinforced mechanisms to function in sub-zero temperatures. Aircraft-mounted ordnance was calibrated for precise deployment over ice and snow, with careful attention to minimizing unintended environmental consequences. Yet alongside these standard adaptations, the fleet carried devices that were experimental, enigmatic, and in many cases, unprecedented. Logs described directed energy systems, electromagnetic pulse devices, and prototypes capable of manipulating atmospheric conditions. The men operating these systems often did so with minimal explanation, instructed only to record effects, anomalies, and unexpected consequences. One particularly chilling entry describes the deployment of a high-energy pulse device over a region suspected of containing subterranean tunnels and the ice fortress. The device emitted waves detectable across multiple instruments, producing fluctuations in magnetic fields, radar anomalies, and temporary interference with communications. Pilots reported seeing lights flicker within the suspected fortress, though no direct impact was observed. The log notes an uneasy awareness that while the weapon did not strike directly, it interacted with hidden structures or systems, confirming that the continent contained elements beyond normal understanding. Such incidents created tension among crews, blending excitement at technological capability with fear of the unknown. The weapons tests were conducted under strict supervision, yet incidents occurred that remain unexplained. Some aircraft experienced sudden, unexplained engine failures during trials. Instruments fluctuated violently, as though influenced by unseen forces. Pilots reported an almost conscious response from the environment. Blasts that should have caused visible disruption were absorbed, deflected, or neutralized in ways that defied physics. These anomalies were meticulously logged but never fully explained, suggesting that the Antarctic environment, or perhaps the structures and phenomena hidden within it, possessed a capacity to interact with advanced technology in unpredictable ways. Eyewitness accounts describe a strange interplay between weapons tests and encounters with unknown craft, previously documented in Section 17. On multiple occasions, craft appeared during or immediately after test firings. Pilots reported objects moving in synchrony with the weapon's discharge, seemingly observing or responding to the energy. Radar operators noted correlated blips and energy fluctuations, suggesting that the unknown craft could detect and react to human-generated signals or force. While no confrontation occurred, these observations implied a level of awareness or intelligence capable of monitoring and potentially countering experimental human technology. The psychological dimension of these tests was significant. Crews operating the experimental devices were acutely aware of the stakes. Not only did they risk mechanical failure or exposure to extreme conditions, but they also confronted phenomena beyond human comprehension. Logs reflect a mixture of awe, fear, and fascination, emotions amplified by the isolation, environmental hostility, and repeated encounters with the inexplicable. Men often questioned the purpose and ethics of the tests. Were they merely advancing military technology, or were they probing forces better left undisturbed? The ambiguity of the results intensified both curiosity and anxiety. Documentation of the weapons tests emphasized precision and observation. Each experiment was logged in detail, noting environmental conditions, instrument readings, crew reactions, and any anomalies observed. Some reports included sketches, diagrams, and calculations, while others relied on narrative descriptions of unexpected phenomena. These meticulous records suggest that the mission's planners sought not only to test technology, but also to study interactions between human-made systems and the extraordinary Antarctic environment. In essence, the test became both experimental and investigative, probing the limits of physics, perception, and human understanding. The strategic implications of these secret weapons tests were profound. If the continent concealed advanced technologies, hidden bases, or unknown structures, as suggested by the ice fortress and subterranean tunnels, the ability to deploy experimental systems could have provided both offensive and reconnaissance advantages. Yet the interactions with unknown craft and anomalous phenomena underscored the limitations and risks. Antarctica was not a passive laboratory. It was an active participant, capable of altering, neutralizing, or responding to human technological interventions in unpredictable ways. This dynamic created a tense interplay between human ambition and the mysteries of the frozen continent. One particularly striking observation recorded in the logs involved a pulse device test that appeared to influence local weather patterns. Sudden gusts of wind, electrical storms, and unusual cloud formations were observed in a previously calm area. While these effects may have been coincidental, the correlation with device activation was noted repeatedly. Pilots and crew described witnessing snow swirling in unnatural patterns, lights flickering within distant ice formations, and temperature fluctuations inconsistent with meteorological expectations. These experiences reinforced the sense that the weapons, the environment, and hidden structures were interconnected in ways not yet understood. Even decades later, the secret weapons tests remain a subject of intrigue and speculation. Declassified fragments of logs and eyewitness accounts hint at extraordinary experimentation, while the full scope of the results remains unknown. Researchers debate whether the tests revealed natural phenomena, interactions with hidden technology, or encounters with intelligence beyond human comprehension. Regardless, the documented anomalies indicate that Antarctica, far from being a passive expanse, actively interacted with human activity, challenging assumptions about the limits of technology, the nature of exploration, and the boundaries of understanding. Ultimately, the secret weapons tests exemplify the duality of Operation Highjump, the pursuit of human capability and knowledge intersecting with the profound mysteries of the Antarctic. They reveal a landscape that responds to human intervention, a continent capable of surprising, testing, and revealing itself in ways that defy conventional explanation. For the men of Highjump, the weapons tests were more than experiments. They were confrontations with the unknown, opportunities to push boundaries, and reminders of the fragile balance between human ambition and the enigmas of the world's most extreme environment. The legacy of these tests persists in the broader narrative of Operation Highjump. They illustrate not only the technological ambitions of post-war military expeditions but also the persistent mysteries that continue to surround Antarctica. The combination of advanced weaponry, unknown phenomena, hidden structures, and unexplained craft creates a tapestry of intrigue, tension, and discovery that has captured imaginations for decades. For historians, researchers, and enthusiasts alike, the secret weapons tests underscore a fundamental truth. The Antarctic is a domain where the ordinary meets the extraordinary, and where human ingenuity confronts the enigmatic forces of nature and perhaps something beyond. Just as Operation Highjump seemed to reach its peak of discovery and exploration, the fleet received orders for a sudden and largely unexplained evacuation. The decision came abruptly, raising questions, fueling speculation, and igniting anxiety among crew members who had witnessed strange phenomena, recorded anomalies, and encountered the unknown firsthand. Official reports framed the evacuation as a precautionary measure due to extreme weather and operational risks, but private logs, diaries, and eyewitness testimonies hint at a far more enigmatic and urgent motivation. Something, or someone, had triggered the withdrawal, and the true reasons remain cloaked in secrecy. For the men on the ground and in the air, the evacuation felt sudden, disorienting, and even ominous. Aircraft and ships were ordered to retreat to safer zones, reconnaissance missions were curtailed, and equipment was hastily consolidated. Crew members, many of whom had spent weeks mapping uncharted territories and documenting anomalies, were forced to leave behind partially completed investigations, experimental instruments, and even photographs and film. The abrupt nature of the order suggested an urgency that went beyond ordinary military procedure. Diaries record a pervasive unease, as if the continent itself, or the forces within it, had demanded withdrawal. Eyewitness accounts of the evacuation hint at extraordinary pressure from phenomena observed during the mission. Several pilots reported intense interference from unknown craft, unusual electromagnetic disturbances, and subtle but persistent vibrations through the ice. Logbooks describe lights and shapes appearing near the fleet's positions, sometimes following aircraft, sometimes hovering over the ice fortress and suspected tunnels. For those who experienced it firsthand, The evacuation was not merely a matter of weather or logistics. It was a response to forces that were active, aware, and potentially hostile. The secrecy surrounding the evacuation order amplified anxiety. Admiral Byrd's logs indicate that only senior officers were fully briefed on the rationale, while lower-ranking personnel received minimal explanation. Even among officers, the reasoning was couched in ambiguity, citing unanticipated environmental hazards and potential operational risks. Yet the timing, coinciding with repeated anomalies, sightings of unknown craft, and strange energy readings, suggested that the fleet's withdrawal was influenced by factors beyond conventional understanding. Crew members speculated privately. Had they been detected by forces concealed beneath the ice? Was the ice fortress active in some way? Or had their presence triggered surveillance, warning, or defense systems? Several flight logs reveal intense moments during the evacuation. Pilots attempting to leave anomaly zones often experienced sudden instrument failures, electromagnetic interference, or visual distortions. One account describes a craft appearing directly above a departing aircraft, causing compasses to spin erratically and radar blips to vanish. Another pilot recounted observing a light descending toward the ice fortress, then abruptly accelerating skyward, disappearing in a manner inconsistent with human technology. These experiences reinforce the sense that the evacuation was not only prudent but possibly necessary for survival. The Antarctic environment, with its hidden structures and mysterious phenomena, seemed to assert control over human movement and decision-making. The human dimension of the evacuation was equally profound. Crew members who had endured harsh conditions, navigated treacherous terrain, and documented extraordinary phenomena faced disappointment, frustration, and even fear. Many had invested weeks of labor and risk into exploration, only to withdraw without resolution. At the same time, the sudden retreat heightened a sense of wonder and urgency. The continent had revealed secrets, hinted at mysteries, and demonstrated capabilities that left the fleet both awed and intimidated. The tension between curiosity and caution, ambition and survival, created an emotional climax that would linger long after the operation concluded. The mysterious nature of the evacuation also raised questions about long-term implications. The fleet left Antarctica with critical documentation, flight logs, photographs, and experimental data, but the full extent of what had been observed remained classified. Analysts and historians reviewing declassified fragments have noted correlations between the timing of the evacuation and anomalous activity recorded in the ice fortress, subterranean tunnels, and sightings of unknown craft. These correlations suggest that the withdrawal was not merely procedural but strategically necessary, potentially to avoid confrontation with forces or phenomena that the fleet was not prepared to engage. Speculation surrounding the evacuation has persisted for decades. Some theorists argue that the fleet encountered evidence of advanced technology, hidden bases, or otherworldly presence that necessitated immediate withdrawal. Others suggest that environmental hazards alone, unpredictable storms, ice instability, or magnetic anomalies, justified the decision. Yet the convergence of anomalous sightings, energy readings, and strategic secrecy lends weight to the possibility that the evacuation was prompted by factors far beyond standard operational concerns. The event remains one of the most enigmatic episodes in the history of Antarctic exploration. Eyewitness testimony adds further intrigue. Some crew members reported seeing lights moving across the ice in patterns that suggested monitoring or observation of the fleet. Others described hearing low-frequency hums or vibrations that could not be traced to natural causes or fleet equipment. The psychological impact of these observations reinforced caution and fear, contributing to the perception that the evacuation was a response to an intelligent, active, and possibly hostile presence. The frozen continent, long assumed to be passive, was asserting influence over human operations, shaping decisions, and controlling outcomes in ways that defied expectation. Despite the sudden withdrawal, the fleet managed to document critical discoveries. Flight logs, photographs, and experimental records preserved evidence of anomalies, unknown craft, the ice fortress, and subterranean tunnels. These records became the foundation for post-expedition analysis and fueled decades of speculation. While the evacuation limited direct engagement with these phenomena, it also preserved the lives of the crew and ensured that the data collected could be analyzed, interpreted, and revisited by future generations. In essence, the evacuation was both a retreat and a strategic preservation of knowledge. Ultimately, the mysterious evacuation embodies the tension and drama of Operation Highjump. It highlights the intersection of human ambition, technological capability, and the profound mysteries of the Antarctic environment. The decision to withdraw underscores the limits of human understanding, the potential presence of forces or intelligence beyond our comprehension, and the necessity of prudence in the face of the unknown. For those who experienced it, the evacuation was not merely a procedural maneuver but a vivid confrontation with the enigmatic, a reminder that Antarctica is a domain where human curiosity meets the extraordinary, and where the cost of discovery can be both profound and immediate. The legacy of the mysterious evacuation continues to resonate. It serves as a cautionary tale, an enduring enigma, and a reminder of the extraordinary encounters that punctuated Operation Highjump. For historians, researchers, and enthusiasts, the evacuation is not simply an endpoint. It is a clue, a fragment of a larger puzzle, and a testament to the continent's ability to challenge, astonish, and conceal its secret from those who dare to explore. In the frozen silence of Antarctica, the fleet's retreat left unanswered questions, preserved mysteries, and an enduring sense of awe that continues to captivate the imagination to this day. Following the abrupt and mysterious evacuation, the full scope of Operation Highjump's discoveries became a tightly guarded secret. Many of the expedition's reports, photographs, and experimental logs were classified or heavily redacted, sparking decades of speculation, intrigue, and conspiracy theories. While official accounts emphasized routine military objectives, survival training, and scientific observation, private notes and fragments of declassified material suggest a deliberate effort to conceal knowledge that could challenge conventional history, national security narratives, and even human understanding of the Antarctic continent. The fleet's documentation was extensive. Flight logs, radar readings, photographs of anomalous phenomena, infrared images of the ice fortress, and detailed records of encounters with unknown craft were meticulously recorded. Yet after the expedition, much of this material was removed from public archives, classified under top-secret clearances, or restricted to military intelligence personnel. Eyewitness accounts describe the retrieval of film reels, journals, and equipment, often under orders that limited both access and discussion. Crew members were instructed to avoid speaking publicly about unusual sightings, anomalies, or events that defied conventional explanation. This systematic suppression of information created a shroud of secrecy around the mission, leaving only fragments of the truth available to researchers decades later. The rationale behind the cover-up remains a topic of intense debate. Some historians argue that the military sought to protect strategic advantages, particularly regarding unknown technologies or potential extraterrestrial encounters. Others suggest that the phenomena documented, unknown craft, energy anomalies, subterranean tunnels, and the ice fortress, posed risks to national security or revealed capabilities beyond human comprehension. Diaries and personal accounts indicate that even Admiral Byrd recognized the sensitive nature of the discoveries, instructing senior officers to classify information carefully, ensuring that it would not fall into public hands or be misinterpreted by untrained observers. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for a deliberate cover-up comes from the retrieval of photographs and film. High-resolution images captured during reconnaissance flights documented anomalous lights, geometric ice formations, and structures that defied conventional geology. However, many of these images were confiscated, with only sanitized or incomplete versions released to the public. Eyewitnesses note that certain frames, depicting tunnels, unknown craft, or parts of the ice fortress, were removed entirely. This selective documentation fueled speculation that authorities sought to suppress evidence of advanced technology, hidden bases, or phenomena inconsistent with mainstream scientific and historical understanding. In addition to photographic evidence, flight logs and radar readings were heavily scrutinized. Entries documenting encounters with unknown craft or electromagnetic anomalies were often redacted or classified at levels higher than routine operational records. Some logs were modified to emphasize routine navigation and weather observations, omitting references to unexplained phenomena. Researchers reviewing declassified fragments note inconsistencies between official summaries and private logs, suggesting deliberate editing to obscure extraordinary events. These actions indicate a systematic effort to control the narrative of Operation Highjump, limiting access to potentially disruptive information while preserving classified knowledge within military channels. The psychological impact of the cover-up on the fleet was significant. Many personnel experienced frustration, confusion, and a lingering sense of awe at events they were forbidden to discuss. Pilots, scientists, and crew members had witnessed phenomena that challenged their understanding of reality, yet they were constrained from sharing these experiences. Diaries reflect inner conflict, pride in having participated in a historic mission, tempered by the burden of secrecy and the knowledge that the full story would remain hidden. This tension between personal experience and official narrative reinforced the sense that Antarctica was a landscape of secrets, where human curiosity and institutional control intersected in profound and sometimes unsettling ways. Eyewitness testimonies suggest that the cover-up extended beyond documentation. Some crew members reported being instructed to leave behind or destroy equipment capable of capturing or analyzing anomalous phenomena. Instruments, cameras, and even experimental devices were removed from the field or dismantled to prevent future study by unauthorized personnel. Such actions indicate a concerted effort not only to classify information, but to actively suppress the capability to gather new evidence, further deepening the aura of mystery surrounding Operation Highjump. The cover-up also created fertile ground for speculation and conspiracy theories. Stories circulated of secret bases hidden beneath the ice, of unknown craft monitored by military forces, and of technologies recovered from subterranean tunnels or the ice fortress. While these accounts often lack direct verification, they are consistent with the fragments of evidence that have emerged from declassified logs, photographs, and personal testimonies. The combination of documented anomalies, abrupt evacuation, and restricted access to critical records suggests that the truth of Operation Highjump was deliberately obscured, leaving researchers and the public to piece together the story from incomplete evidence. Even decades later, the consequences of the cover-up continue to resonate. Researchers analyzing declassified fragments have uncovered patterns indicating that encounters with unknown craft, energy anomalies, and hidden structures were both frequent and significant. The deliberate suppression of data has ensured that the mission's full implications remain open to interpretation. In essence, the cover-up transformed Operation Highjump from a documented military expedition into a narrative of mystery, intrigue, and unanswered questions, an enigmatic chapter in the history of Antarctic exploration. Strategically, the hidden reports served multiple purposes. By controlling access to information, military authorities could safeguard potential technological advantages, prevent public panic, and manage the geopolitical implications of discoveries that challenge conventional science or history. At the same time, the cover-up preserved the lives and security of personnel, limiting exposure to phenomena that were poorly understood and potentially dangerous. The dual motives of secrecy, protection, and control underscore the high stakes of Operation Highjump and highlight the complex interplay between exploration, discovery, and institutional authority. The legacy of the hidden reports is profound. They illustrate the tension between knowledge and secrecy, between human curiosity and institutional control, and between extraordinary discovery and the constraints of official narrative. Operation Highjump, once publicly framed as a routine post-war expedition, emerges in private logs and fragmented records as a mission of unprecedented encounters, technological experimentation, and discovery of phenomena that challenge conventional understanding. The deliberate concealment of these events ensures that the Antarctic remains a landscape of mystery, where secrets are preserved beneath ice, snow, and official redactions. Ultimately, the hidden reports and cover-up reveal the complexity of human engagement with the unknown. They demonstrate that the pursuit of discovery is often intertwined with discretion, caution, and the imperatives of security. The legacy of Operation Highjump is not simply the extraordinary events that occurred in Antarctica, but the deliberate management and suppression of knowledge that ensured these events remained largely hidden from public view. For historians, researchers, and enthusiasts, the cover-up is both a challenge and an invitation to sift through fragments, analyze anomalies, and attempt to reconstruct a mission whose full story may never be entirely revealed. The cover-up also amplifies the emotional resonance of Operation Highjump. Crew members who witnessed the unknown, recorded anomalies, and engaged with phenomena beyond comprehension were forced to reconcile personal experience with silence. The tension between revelation and concealment, between curiosity and control, underscores the human stakes of exploration in extreme environments. In this way, the hidden reports are not merely documents. They are symbols of the enduring mystery, the unrecorded struggles, and the profound that defined one of the most enigmatic expeditions in Antarctic history. With Operation Highjump concluded and the fleet withdrawn, a storm of theories and speculations began to emerge, both among the men who participated and in later analyses by researchers, historians, and conspiracy theorists. The evidence collected, fragments of reports, eyewitness accounts, photographs of anomalies, radar readings, and descriptions of the ice fortress, subterranean tunnels, and unknown craft, defied conventional explanation. The continent, long assumed to be a frozen wasteland, appeared to harbor secrets that challenged everything from historical timelines to technological assumptions and even the nature of human understanding itself. One dominant line of speculation focused on the possibility of advanced Nazi technology concealed in Antarctica. Proponents of this theory argue that, as World War II drew to a close, Nazi scientists and engineers sought to preserve experimental aircraft, energy devices, and research in remote locations beyond the reach of Allied forces. The ice fortress, subterranean tunnels, and unexplained craft align with this narrative, suggesting hidden bases or technology caches intended to survive and operate in isolation. Logbooks, radar anomalies, and pilot reports of unusual activity lend a degree of plausibility, although no direct confirmation has ever emerged. The notion of a secret Nazi stronghold operating in the polar silence continues to fuel intense debate and imagination. A second line of speculation explores the possibility of extraterrestrial involvement. The descriptions of unknown craft, capable of hovering silently, executing impossible maneuvers, and responding intelligently to human activity, have led some researchers to suggest contact with non-human intelligence. In this context, the ice fortress and tunnels may not be human-made at all, but remnants of an alien presence deliberately concealed beneath the ice for millennia. Proponents point to the precision of the structures, the anomalous energy readings, and the behavior of unknown craft as evidence that humanity stumbled upon a domain maintained by forces far beyond terrestrial engineering capabilities. Some theorists propose a hybrid explanation, a convergence of human experimentation and alien technology. In this scenario, advanced Nazi engineers could have discovered or recovered extraterrestrial devices and attempted to study, replicate, or harness them within the Antarctic strongholds. The fleet's encounters with unknown craft and the effects observed during experimental weapons tests support this line of thinking, suggesting that Antarctica was a site of overlapping mysteries, both human and non-human, each influencing the other. These speculations blur the line between historical reality and extraordinary hypothesis, emphasizing the profound ambiguity of Operation Highjump's findings. Geological and natural explanations also remain part of the discourse. Some researchers argue that ice formations, unusual weather patterns, and electromagnetic anomalies could account for some of the observations, offering a more conventional explanation for certain phenomena. As the sun set over the endless white expanse of Antarctica, Operation Highjump came to an end, leaving behind a legacy that was as mysterious as it was profound. For the men who had participated, the expedition had been a journey into the unknown, a confrontation with forces and phenomena beyond comprehension, and a test of courage, endurance, and curiosity. They had witnessed structures that defied human engineering, craft that seemed to think and respond independently, and anomalies that challenged the very laws of physics. Yet, with the abrupt evacuation and subsequent cover-up, these experiences became private treasures and burdens, locked away from public view. The emotional weight of the mission settled on each member differently. Pilots who had flown over the ice fortress and observed unknown craft described a mixture of awe, fear, and disbelief. Scientists who had monitored energy anomalies and studied the subterranean tunnels felt the excitement of discovery tempered by frustration and uncertainty, unable to fully understand or explain the phenomena they had encountered. Sailors who had traversed the frozen seas reflected on the peril, isolation, and silent power of the Antarctic, realizing that they had witnessed a world that few humans would ever see and fewer would ever comprehend. These layered experiences created a tapestry of emotion, pride, wonder, fear, and unresolved tension that defined the psychological landscape of the mission. One of the most profound aspects of the expedition was the interplay between human ambition and the overwhelming forces of the unknown. The men of Highjump were trained, prepared, and technologically equipped, yet they were confronted by phenomena that rendered conventional understanding insufficient. The unknown craft, the ice fortress, the subterranean tunnels, and the electromagnetic anomalies all served as reminders that humanity's reach, while vast, was not infinite. There was an enduring lesson in humility, that even with all the knowledge, skill, and bravery they possessed, they had been visitors in a landscape that operated by rules not entirely of human design. Reflection on the mission also illuminates a deeper philosophical dimension. Antarctica, as revealed through Operation Highjump, is not merely a geographic location. It is a crucible for the extraordinary, a place where human history, technological ambition, and mystery converge. The continent serves as a mirror, reflecting the limits of human perception and understanding, and challenging assumptions about the world. For the participants, the emotional climax was not only in witnessing the unknown but in realizing the fragility and transience of human comprehension in the face of phenomena that are vast, hidden, and possibly eternal. The sudden evacuation, the cover-up of reports, and the secrecy surrounding the expedition amplified the emotional resonance of the mission. Crew members were forced to reconcile the extraordinary experiences they had lived with the necessity of silence. The knowledge of what had been encountered, anomalies, advanced technology, or even potential extraterrestrial presence, was both a gift and a burden. For many, the act of leaving Antarctica, knowing that much of the truth would remain hidden, created a lingering tension between achievement and incompletion, between understanding and mystery. This duality underscores the emotional weight of the expedition, a tension that resonates with anyone who confronts the unknown. The expedition's legacy extends beyond individual experience to collective imagination. Decades later, researchers, historians, and enthusiasts continue to study fragments of logs, declassified photographs, and eyewitness accounts. The emotional power of the mission lies in its ability to inspire curiosity, speculation, and wonder. Each anomaly, each unexplained phenomenon, invites reflection on the nature of discovery, the limits of human knowledge, and the enduring mysteries of the Antarctic continent. The fleet's encounters, documented yet obscured, serve as both a challenge and a call to imagination, prompting questions about what lies hidden beneath the ice and how the secrets of the past continue to shape our understanding of the present. The ice fortress, in particular, stands as a symbol of mystery and human limitation. Its geometric precision, the evidence of subterranean tunnels, and the proximity of unknown craft create a tableau that is both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Observers of the mission could not help but confront profound questions. Who built this structure? For what purpose? And what forces were active in its protection or operation? These questions remain unanswered, yet they evoke a powerful emotional response, a blend of curiosity, fear, and reverence that captures the human experience when faced with the extraordinary. Encounters with unknown craft add another layer to the emotional narrative. Pilots and crew reported objects that moved with intelligence, defied physical laws, and responded to human presence. The sense of being observed, of interacting with forces or entities beyond comprehension, created intense emotional peaks during the expedition. Awe, wonder, and fear became intertwined, forming a psychological landscape that mirrored the frozen, unpredictable terrain of Antarctica itself. These experiences highlight the profound impact of the mission, not merely in terms of historical documentation, but in shaping human perception and imagination. The secret weapons tests, previously discussed in Section 19, also contributed to the emotional arc. These experiments, interacting with both natural and unknown forces, reinforced a sense of human ambition meeting the limits of the possible. The tension between technological prowess and uncontrollable phenomena underscored the drama of the expedition, reminding participants that discovery carries both reward and risk. The psychological imprint of these tests, combined with encounters with anomalies and the ice fortress, forms a central part of the emotional climax of Operation Highjump, blending achievement, fear, and awe. Ultimately, the expedition leaves a profound takeaway. Antarctica is not a passive backdrop for human activity, but a living, reactive, and mysterious environment. Operation Highjump reminds us that there are places on Earth where human ambition intersects with phenomena that challenge understanding, where courage and curiosity are tested against the unknown, and where history, technology, and mystery converge. The emotional climax of the mission is both individual and collective, reflecting the human experience of awe, humility, and the enduring desire to explore and understand. In reflecting on the mission, one cannot ignore the broader philosophical implications. The continent's hidden structures, the unknown craft, the anomalies, and the cover-up force consideration of questions that extend beyond history or military ambition. What does it mean for humanity to encounter forces that exceed comprehension? How should knowledge of the extraordinary be integrated into our understanding of the world? And perhaps most hauntingly, what secrets remain hidden, awaiting discovery in the silent, frozen expanse of Antarctica? These questions resonate deeply, leaving an emotional impression that endures long after the last ship departed the ice. For the modern observer, the story of Operation Highjump is not merely a historical account. It is an invitation to reflection, imagination, and curiosity. It challenges assumptions, evokes wonder, and compels consideration of what lies beyond the known. The frozen continent, with its ice fortress, subterranean tunnels, unknown craft, and energy anomalies, becomes a stage for human emotion, exploration, and philosophical inquiry. The expedition's events remind us that mystery is not only external but internal, shaping perception, thought, and the emotional landscape of those who dare to explore. As the final logs and reports were sealed, the fleet departed Antarctica, leaving the ice fortress, the anomalies, and the unknown craft behind, but not forgotten. The continent remained silent, holding its secrets beneath layers of ice, preserving its mysteries against time and human intervention. Yet for those who had experienced the expedition, the emotional imprint remained indelible, a blend of awe, fear, curiosity, and reverence that continues to inspire generations. Operation Highjump, in its dramatic encounters with the unknown, captures the essence of exploration, not merely as a pursuit of knowledge, but as a profound emotional and intellectual journey into the extraordinary. In the end, the mission's emotional climax is inseparable from its historical and mysterious dimensions. The frozen landscape, the hidden structures, the unknown craft, and the secrecy all converge to create a narrative that resonates on multiple levels. It is a story of human courage, curiosity, and ambition, but also of humility, awe, and the recognition that some secrets are vast, ancient, and deliberately concealed. The reflection offered by the expedition compels us to consider not only what humanity knows, but what lies just beyond the edge of understanding, waiting to challenge, inspire, and transform.